This story began in the southeast of the entrance to Changshan on a small island called the Flying Dragon. Not far from this island there was a man with his child, whom he put in a portable sling. Together they sailed on a wooden boat closer and closer to the island, on which there was a rock in the form of a shark. This man's face was focused on the task, and he tried to ignore the shouts of people from the side. Passers-by called him crazy, and one even asked him to take that child with him. The journey here was very dangerous, and for many people meant immediate death. Therefore, everyone who watched the man and his child sail away into the distance had already buried him. This is exactly how the people from Chonghan Island shouted at the father and son that they went to the island of the Flying Dragon. But 17 years have already passed since that moment, and a lot has changed. Having come here again, the father climbed onto the rock and prepared to scream. He shouted at the top of his voice, calling for his son, whose name was Li Mu Huan. And a few seconds after he finished screaming, a whirlpool was visible in the water. Within a few seconds, human hair could be seen from this hydrogen. And then his son's body gradually began to emerge from the whirlpool in the water. His son got out completely and looked at his father, waiting for him to say what he wanted. But the father only said that his son should come up here for a minute for an important conversation. Then the son said that even in this situation he could talk to him for a short time. The father's voice became rougher, and he said that his son needed to get up since the conversation was really important. The two of them moved to a wooden hut that stood not far from this place. In general, it was quite cozy here, and the usual amenities in the form of wooden chairs and a table were also present. Sitting here, the father said that he did not remember whether he told his son about the place where he lived before. Li Mu Huan remained silent while pouring some sake into his father's cup. While he himself remembered that he had told him about this place more than 10 times in his life. Then the father said that in the place where he once lived there lived 9 dragons. The son had not yet heard these details. These dragons clung to each other all the time. And at one time the younger and older brothers wanted to take over the world. However, after they both ascended, they refused to recognize each other's powers and began to find out who is evil and who is good. The son thought that evil should go away. We must not forget about such a concept as humanity. Listening to the story, the son thought that the story was some kind of nonsense, the dragons controlled power hiding behind this humanity. The father could not tolerate this then, so he secretly fled from there and boarded a ship along the Yangtze River. The father said that this was not true, and his son just went crazy and left home. But the son, stretching himself, replied that the escape from home was for completely different reasons. Otherwise, he didn't like this answer at all, and he was upset with his son. Mu Huan decided to change the topic and ask if his father brought weapons and books in addition to alcohol. Turning his head, the son saw 7 books and only 1 sword that his father had brought. Mu Huan also noticed that among the books there were those that were prohibited, and they could only be carried out without being noticed. My father said that his cousins almost killed him that time. He asked rhetorical questions to his son, asking how he could know that the books were prohibited. The son replied that it was because they were offended by him. Then the father became interested in the reason. And Mo Huan said that it was because their father beat them every day, calling it just a test of strength. The father tried to justify himself by saying that this was a comparison of forces, but the son replied that he sometimes broke their hands. Switching the topic again, Mu Huan decided to ask why his father decided to remember the past. But in response, the man only looked into his eyes and picked up a cup of alcohol from the table, after which he drank the entire contents of this cup in one gulp. Then he notified son that he was on Chonghan Island today, and he heard interesting rumors. There were rumors that an internal conflict had broken out in the city of Kowloon. Because of this, my grandfather, uncle, and brothers were wounded and someone was killed. This happened a month and 10 days ago. Well, the son answered his father that all their lives they were not interested in what was happening there. Then the father got up from the table and looked out the window and said that when he returned to the island it was already dark. And he thought all the time, and after several hours of thinking about it, he found only one conclusion. He turned to his son and prepared to address him. The father asked Li Mu Huan to do everything that needed to be done because he entrusted it to his son. Then Huan asked his father if he needed to go there and do everything. When the father did not answer anything, he asked again if he was asking to grind everyone into powder. The father said that everything is not so categorical and there is no need to kill anyone, but you need to take revenge. Then the son guessed and said that it seemed that he was asking him to save family members whom he did not like. Then the mukvan said that they should go together since the task ahead was quite difficult. But the man replied that he should stop clowning around and accept the task. In addition, father said that his hands were shaking so much that he couldn't even hold a weapon in them. But if he goes there, he will still tear all his opponents to pieces with his bare hands. The son asked his father why they should help those brothers if they never helped them. Then the father replied that everything was much more complicated and asked his son if he knew why it was good to have brothers. Li Muhuan was not particularly interested, and he decided that his father simply had not sobered up after drinking. But then he threw the bag of money right on the table in front of his son. He said that when my son is already 20, it's time to dive into the open world. The father advised him to spend money wisely, and the son asked if he wanted him to leave now. And he added that if the head of the family decided so, then his son has no right to think twice. The son remembered well her father in the past, a father who could stand on the edge of a cliff for days and watch the movement of the typhoon. Once it even happened that he was struck by lightning after he pulled out his sword, wanting to feel its charge. The father once threatened the pirates, forcing them to move 200 li away from the island, and because of his son as much as 300 li. I thought for a very long time whether Huan picked up the bag of money from the table, and he thought that he had a very good chance to visit Kanho. But it still wasn't obvious to his son, so he needed time to think. He could not understand why his father was sending him there instead of where his son could die. Then Huang asked his father if it was really better for no one to know that he was his son. Such a simple question angered my father, and he said that everything was already obvious. Then Li Muhuan slammed his hand on the table and voiced his agreement, saying that he would go. However, he has a few requests before leaving. And the father agreed to listen to them. Nu Huan asked to borrow her father's sword because he needed a tool to fight against opponents. The father agreed but was dissatisfied with this request, saying that it was ugly to rob one's own father. Then the son quickly began to approach his father, and he was scared and not ready for this. Then Mu Huan told him to calm down because he just wants to hug his dad. The son hugged his father because he understood that they would not meet for a very long time. The son also asked his father to eat normally all this time and drink as little alcohol as possible. The man promised his son that he would drink much less, but his appetite is not under his control. The son's penultimate request was not to touch the ginseng that grew near the house and not to use it to create alcohol. Finally, Mu Huan decided to ask his father, no matter what happens, not to jump into the lion whirlpool, which was the strongest on the island. At this moment, the son thought that perhaps he should have hugged his father more often. Dad pushed Huang aside and told him to get into the vodka and be as careful as possible on this journey. The son said that he would be back soon, and also said that Augie would be very upset, so his father should not leave her alone. Then the man decided to warn the son that wherever he arrived, he might receive a cold reception. But Mu Huan said that his father shouldn't worry about it, because he won't pay attention. After all, his son is not the one who ran away from home from his family at night. The water that day was choppy and the waves kept hitting the rocks of the island. Li Mu Huan used dolphins to propel his watercraft. Using ropes, he tied them to his boat and in this way could move without effort. As he set off, he looked back to see his father's reaction. And when I saw him, I saw in his eyes pride in the son he had raised. Even though his dad was not an ideal father, he was still able to bring out the best qualities in his son. Dad thought that time flies very quickly, and before he had time to look back, Huang was already leaving him. After all, 17 years ago, everything was completely different and everything was just beginning. Then he, together with his little son, stood on the edge of the cliff and promised that when he grew up he would bend the whole world to him. People did not believe Mu Huan's father, because they did not understand the motivation for escaping from their native land. But his son believed him, and even at such a young age, he was ready to follow his dad to the end. Father searched Flying Dragon Island from top to bottom, and on the 10th day, when the sky was sorry to watch the group ascend, lightning struck. From the strike of this lightning, a huge part of the rock fell down along which the father and son climbed. Dad couldn't understand what was happening, but then he saw that when these stones fell, they released a mysterious inscription. Then 2 years after these events, the son was on the verge of being sucked into the cycle. With the last of his strength, the father held his son by a not very strong rope. During this, he said that if he did not pass such a test, he would not be able to accomplish any feats. But during these interesting tests, the rope that was holding his son suddenly broke. and then little Mu Huan began to drown in the water cycle. The father very quickly realized what he had done and did not know what to do next. He began shouting to his son that he would save him right away, although he himself did not understand what to do. But suddenly he saw something and it made him believe in miracles. He saw a dolphin jump out of the whirlpool and his son grabbed onto it and swam up. After that day, Mu Huan became friends with the dolphin family and began to spend all his free time in the water. Then the father could not believe it because it seemed that what happened was just an accident. Then he thought about the fact that he did not see a river eel off the coast of the island. One of his son's friends was a sea snake 22 meters long. This only spoke of Mu Huan's strength. And the father was offended that his son did not tell him anything about his powers. While he was thinking about this, Oga's mother went out onto the cliff and looked for Huan's father. She immediately asked her father if his son had left, but he asked if she thought that her son would withstand all the difficulties. Mom ignored this and asked if the father had told his son about his health, because most likely he would not return soon. Walking away from the cliff, father said that there is no need to powder your head with this nonsense. Augie's mom asked if the father also told his son about their relationship. Then father said that it was too early to reveal all the cards and Huang would understand everything when time passes. By that time, Li Mu Huan had already moored his boat near one of the piers. But while tying her with a rope, he heard a woman's voice calling him. A young girl carrying a beach bag was running towards him. She seemed to know him. Coming closer, the girl asked if Huang understood that he could leave only in 10 days. He replied that he would be able to leave now, at the same time asking why there was no one on the pier. The girl replied that Kanggu Appa's company was here, but when they learned that Huang was coming here, everyone immediately ran away. Then the hero said that he had some news and he would like to share it with the girl. They started walking along the beach and Huang said that he had decided to leave Hangzhou. The girl was tensed by this and asked if he was going to do it alone, and Huang answered positively. He argued his loneliness by saying that his father's health was not okay and he would not be able to help him. Then the girl said that she had only seen him yesterday and everything was fine with him, but her son also wanted to believe it. After that, the girl asked how long the hero would float away, and Huang replied that for about a year. The girl thought for a while and then asked if she could go with Huang. Then Li Mu said that this was out of the question since Gango was a very dangerous place. But the girl really wanted to go with Huang because without him she had absolutely nothing to do here. Li Mu thought for a while but still did not dare to agree with the girl because it was dangerous. And then he slowly leaned towards Oga, and this surprised the girl a little. She blushed and immediately asked why Huan was leaning towards her like that. She suggested that today she had something on her lips again, and the hero responded positively. Augie then asked if Huang was going to remove that something from her lips. The hero moved even closer, after which the couple kissed right on the seashore. They did not spend much time like this as Huang was in a hurry and was preparing the boat for the journey. After he prepared everything and took the necessary supply of things, he was ready to go. Sailing away from the shore, he thought that he would need to invite Augie to live with him after his return. The hero touched Oga's lips twice. Everyone from the spicy Zhonghan calls her the crazy dragon girl. While on deck, the hero noticed some movement in the water right near the stern. These were the same dolphins whom the hero called Sun and Pai, and he said that he was glad to see them, but they should swim home. Then the dolphins jumped out of the water, especially high, as if saying goodbye to Huang. The hero said that while he is away, the dolphins should take care of themselves and everyone around them. After these words, the two beautiful dolphins turned around and began to swim in the opposite direction to the movement of the ship. Changda was a sea eel, and the relationship between him and the dolphins used to be not very good, but everything changed 15 years ago. Then Huang climbed onto one of the rocks that was nearby an underwater cave. He wasn't sure what kind of bottom there was, but he still decided to take a brave leap. Diving under the water, he saw his two dolphin friends. Also looking right in front of him was that very underwater cave, which turned out to be quite deep. When he swam close enough, he saw an eel in front of him. It was quite impressive in size and met the hero by showing its sharp beak. Because the conger eel was scared, it immediately showed its grin to Huang. The boy was calm and thought about how best to act in this situation. The conger eel growled, but even Huang could see that he was exhausted and very scared. Then he noticed that the tail of this eel was crushed by a stone, and because of this he could not move. They together with the dolphins made some effort to move this boulder, and they succeeded. After this, the eel growled once again, and Huang took it as gratitude. But Huang also noticed that this cave had a continuation which attracted him. He asked the conger eel if he could swim further through this cave, and he nodded. The dolphins together with the boy began to swim further and further through the cave. And after some time Juan noticed that he could rise a little higher. Having risen he noticed that this cave had an air pocket and of quite significant size. Moreover, this cave became not underwater but above water, and the boy began to walk along it. In front of him, he saw something that he had never expected to see deep in an underwater cave. In front of him was a tree that was surrounded by bushes that looked more like corals. From this tree hung fruits that were unlike any other fruit. They weren't particularly large, but they glowed, and Juan decided that they looked pretty tasty. This fruit began to melt from the warmth of Huang's hands, so the boy took action. He popped the fruit directly into his mouth to see what it tasted like. But then he very quickly realized that it was not for nothing that this fruit was hidden from people so far away. It was not tasty at all. Juan realized that in addition to the terrible taste, something was also happening to him. After just a few seconds, the heroes found it very difficult to stand on their eyelids, and he could not understand what was happening. He began to feel dizzy, and Huang gradually began to lose consciousness. A moment later he fell to the floor, and from the outside it seemed that he was fast asleep. Meanwhile, the sun was already setting over the horizon and evening was approaching. Dolphins were sticking out of the water at the entrance to the cave and trying to wake up the boy with their screeching. But he lost consciousness and did not hear them, after which he woke up some time later. When he opened his eyes, he saw some writing on the walls which surprised him very much. He couldn't understand what was written there at first glance, so he came closer. Having come close enough, Huang realized that these inscriptions were a fallen part of the rock with inscriptions on the Kijial. This type of writing was one of the valuable military relics. After that day, Huang became much stronger. Already in the village on the ground that Huang stepped on today, he picked up a piece of earth from the floor. Bringing it to his nose, he realized that even the earth was not like that at all. While he was sniffing the ground, he heard someone ask if he was looking for a tavern. Turning around, he saw a girl who said that she knew a good place where they had cheap and tasty food. Then Juan smiled at the little girl and thought that the tavern wasn't such a bad idea. He said that he was just looking for such a place, and the girl led him along. When she got close enough to the tavern, the girl started screaming to get her mother's attention. Huang entered the tavern, and the little girl said that she had brought a guest. Mom came out of the kitchen and greeted the guest at the tavern. Juan in turn also greeted the woman. He took out a bag of money and asked him to eat something for a few coins. For this money you can spend the night for 2 days and eat well. The hero gave a little more money and in return asked to tell a little about the surroundings of the village. Then the little girl said that she herself would explain everything to the guest, so Mom went to the kitchen to prepare food. Then the little girl thought about it because she didn't know where to start the story. But after a few seconds they sat down on the table and the girl began to talk very emotionally about the village. She said that big cities are always full of various swindlers who attempt to kill other people's chickens. Yona, that's the girl's name, stopped talking about the village when Mom brought food from the kitchen and gave it to Juan. The hero began to try the food, and the girl looked directly at him with interest, waiting for a reaction. After the first bite, Huang's face became very surprised. It looked like he had never tried anything like this. Within a second, he provided the food provided by Yona's mother with incredible speed. When the girl noticed that Huang was very tasty, he said that mother's culinary skills were known even on Mount Shan. Huang wondered why I could see other guests in the tavern. He turned his attention to Yun because she was trying not to answer this question. But then she looked away and said that someone was making sure that guests would not come to them. Huan asked who was doing this, and the girl replied that it was someone from Sanshin. At that moment, the girl's mother came up to her and told her not to interfere with Huan's food, since all the food would get cold. After this phrase, the mother and tavern owner began to go to the kitchen, and Huang remained thoughtfully silent. He continued to eat and was able to finish all the dishes in just a minute. Huang informed Yong that he had not eaten like this for a very long time and had not tasted such delicious food. Then when Huan saw that Mom wasn't looking at them, he said that he had a question for the girl. I asked her why people from Sanshin scare away the guests of this tavern. First, the little girl turned around to make sure her mother was not looking in their direction. Then she said that the servants began to talk about how there was a place where the food was tastier than in Taiharu, an eatery in the village of Komen. And because of this, Sanshin was ordered to close the Seongharu Inn. The hero suggested that the village of Komen is the same one that is located in the city of Hangzhou. The girl confirmed this by saying that Sanshin is a village in Komen. Then Huang remembered that Sanshin warriors are quite strong and strong fighters. The girl did not understand this, so Huan corrected himself and said that in the entire era no one had yet managed to defeat the Sanshin fighters. Yona said that all the Koman property located on Shan Mountain belongs to the Sanshin, and because of this they are in charge. Then Huang concluded that the ultimate problem is in the commune village, and the girl agreed with this. The hero said that he really hates those people who cause trouble for others, in particular ordinary people. And even more, he hates those who have the courage to mock the weaker. Yona noticed that Huan had a sword behind his back, which meant that he knew martial arts. After this, the girl asked the hero how strong a warrior he was. Li Mu said that he couldn't say for sure, but it was so much that he definitely wouldn't lose to other warriors. When he turned his gaze to the girl, he saw that she was trying to put something in his hand. She took something out of her pocket and put it in Huan's hand, saying that it was her treasure, and she gives them to him for protecting her and her mother and their tavern. Huan smiled when he saw what was in his palm. The girl said that she promised that with the first money she earned she would repay him for his help. But when Huan opened the small bag, he saw a child's drawing there, saying that he really liked it. Then the girl was very happy and asked if the warrior agreed to the deal. Huang said that he would help the family until the whole situation calms down. Yona was very happy. She screamed loudly, thanking Huang for helping them in such a difficult situation for everyone. A mother who was standing nearby heard this and was puzzled by her daughter's joy. On the same day when night fell, the hero already had a plan of action. Until this time he sat with the little girl and chatted with her about the latest news. That evening Huan talked with Yona until she began to feel sleepy, and somehow it turned out that Yona told Huan much more about Kangho that father himself said. And when she fell asleep, the hero left the tavern and came to another larger building. He climbed onto the roof of one of the nearby buildings in order to improve his visibility. He looked around to find the most vulnerable points in the area, and suddenly he saw the gate, which seemed to him rather flimsy. He realized that the servants of the Koman village live here, which means all the targets are here. Looking closely at the sign above one of the entrances, he saw that this was the gate to Sanshin. With one movement he managed to make this gate split into two parts and fly out. After that, he calmly walked inside, looking around again. When he crossed the threshold and walked a few meters after the gate, he heard the movement of soldiers in his direction. These were the servants of the commune village, and they surrounded the hero, asking who he was. In response, the hero smiled and asked if these minions knew about Sanharu's tavern. These warriors did not understand anything, but one of them said that the Sanharu was that inn at the pier. The hero said that it was good that the warriors understood what he was talking about, because it would be necessary to talk about it after they lost. This made all the subordinates of the commune very angry, and they asked if Huang knew who they were. But the hero only smiled and prepared to attack one of the warriors. Everyone who was looking directly at Huang at that moment did not even notice how several of their comrades flew into the wall. Then the squad leader looked towards one of those brothers and was shocked. He realized that in that second the hero managed to rush and kick one of the warriors. This warrior flew into the crowd of others and was eliminated, and the hero continued his movement. And then Huan walked up to the main building of these warriors and hugged one of the logs. This log was responsible for supporting the building, and Huang managed to pull it out. This sight seriously frightened all the warriors who watched it. Often the leader of all these servants sat in his office and wrote something. Hearing the roar, he thought that there might be a small earthquake going on outside. He went outside and asked his soldiers what that noise was. But when I came out, I saw that everyone was running in different directions out of fear. Due to the fact that they all ran at random, the hero managed to stop some of them with a blow from a log. After several more such blows, all the warriors were defeated and lay motionless on the floor. While the hero was looking at all the defeated enemies, he heard someone screaming behind him. He turned around and saw the leader in front of him, who said that the stranger did not even understand where he was. Then Huang said that he would not answer anything, since they would have a conversation later. After this, the leader noticed how Huang pushed off from the ground and jumped high. He watched as an ordinary person held a huge log in his hands and flew towards the building. Huang swung very hard and prepared to deliver the decisive blow. With just one blow from this log, he managed to completely destroy the main building of the commune's minions. There was a huge explosion as the building collapsed like a house of cards. The leader and several of his bodyguards watched this with their mouths open. After the dust settled, they saw that Huang was walking towards them and still had that log in his hands. His face was focused, and it was clear that he was not joking with the minions of the commune at all. The hero stuck his log into the ground with such force that the stone tiles scattered in different directions. At that same second, the bodyguard and the leader of the minions fell to their knees and began to apologize to the hero. Then Huang said that he was hired by Xiangharu and the commune should not interfere in their affairs. After these words, he picked up the log and lightly threw them towards the bodyguards. At the same time, he approached the leader and said that this was the last warning for him. The leader fell to his knees again and said that this would never happen again. The hero began to leave but finally said that it would be nice if they helped promote Sanharu's business in the future. The next day, the whole tavern was filled with the little girl's laughter. Yona ran towards Huang to report the latest news related to their tavern. She ran as fast as she could along the corridor trying to find the room where the hero was staying. Approaching the right doors, she said that on the pier they say that the food in their tavern is the most delicious and the guests are already getting ready to arrive. But then she gave the door a gentle kick with her small hand and on a whim it opened easily. Looking inside, she was very surprised because there was no light in the room and everything was cleaned not as usual. After looking around the whole room, she realized that Huang was not here, he had disappeared somewhere. Meanwhile, where Huang was now, the weather was very clear and the sun illuminated everything around. He walked along the road waving some kind of stick and remembered the sweet kiss with Augie waiting for it to happen again. Yona, who was in Huang's room at the time, was very angry because her friend simply ran away. She started screaming that she would find this coward and tell him everything she thought. Huang was still walking along the road and remembering Ogi, and all the memories were positive. Then he stopped and looked at the sky above him, which was very clear without clouds. At that moment, he wondered whether his father was fulfilling his request for proper nutrition. Huang's father was just eating food at that moment. He told Augie's mom that this food was a little bitter but not at all critical. Then she said that she found these sprouts under a cliff, so considering that now Autumn has decided to pick them. The father looked at him with a very surprised face and asked again what he had done. Well, then Oka's mother said that she left the roots so that next year the berries would grow again. The father exhaled and told her that next time she should not pull out the roots either but only cut off the sprouts. Ogie's mom said that she understood everything and, trying to change the topic, began to stuff other food directly into Huang's father's mouth. Meanwhile, in another village, life was in full swing. Given the good weather, everyone was walking and shopping at the market. Among this crowd walked a very stern man who held a scabbard with his sword in his hands. When he passed by one of the nooks and crannies, he was noticed by another man who was eating an apple at that moment. Having taken one bite from it, a gambling emotion appeared in his eyes and he began to walk in that direction. He came out of the nook and began to walk a short distance from this warrior. He looked around and looked at his comrades, who also began to follow him, and this made him smile. Then the man from the back alley said that this man's duty today is to serve him as food. The mysterious warriors heard quite bold and daring statements from people around them. They started arguing right in front of him and saying that since he was drunk, he should go home and beat his wife. The warriors stopped and silently began to listen to the conversations of these drunkards. The third man came up from behind that mysterious warrior and stopped on his shoulder. He asked that warrior directly in his ear what kind of gathering had gathered here. At that same second, the warrior felt a pop in his chest but ignored it because of his conversations. The man standing behind him said that there were a lot of people here and he'd better go home. The two men who were arguing with each other also ran away in different directions, and the warrior continued on his way. But suddenly this warrior stopped because he felt that he had lost something. When he put his hand into his inner pocket, he felt that something he really needed was missing. Then he became embittered because he realized that those drunkards had robbed him. And having focused his vision on everyone who was in the crowd at some distance, he saw those three thieves. He began to run with the thought of revenge on those thieves. He did not even think about the lost money. Having come close enough, he saw that the thieves had separated and two of them were talking to each other. He came even closer and said that such a thing as theft does not suit people like them. He grabbed one of them by the throat and asked which of the three thieves stole his things. The thief, who was held above the ground, barely gathered the strength to say that he had no idea. But the warrior only looked into his eyes and simply remained silent for a long time. Then he threw this thief right on the floor, and that thief's comrade decided that it was time to leave. He began to run as fast as he could in fear, but for some reason the warrior stood near the first defeated enemy. After running around several corners and changing several streets, the thief calmed down a little. But he still felt anxious because it was obvious that the mysterious warrior was quite strong. He started taking out items from his inside pocket as he felt uncomfortable carrying it. While he was looking behind him waiting for the mysterious warrior there, he suddenly appeared not where he expected. He ran straight into the chest of the mysterious warrior who had just been able to eliminate his comrade. There was pure fear in the eyes of this thief and his face began to drip. Before the warrior struck him, the thief shouted very loudly that it could be heard throughout the entire village. Meanwhile, Huang walked around the local market and was surprised at the number of different shops. He also really liked that there were a lot of beautiful women here who were pleasant to look at, but he didn't pay much attention to them and soon asked several warriors if Hangzhou was located here. The three warriors turned around and Huan noticed that their faces did not inspire kindness. In their hands there were sheaths with swords and this slightly tensed the hero, but overall he felt safe. But suddenly one of the warriors said that this is Hangzhou and it seems that Huang is a student of one of the famous military schools. They began to talk with one of the warriors while the other two could not understand how a person could be so stupid. Then the three warriors began to whisper among themselves and in general their faces looked rather angry. Then Huang asked if these warriors had any work for him. One of the warriors said that petty thefts have become more frequent lately, tell the hero how to fight them correctly. After this, the second warrior said that it is very noisy here, so he offers to go to another place offering a drink at his expense. And the group began to walk, moving further and further from the center along the alleys. Huang said that it didn't look like there could be a beer hall in such a place. The warriors looked at each other and decided that this place was ideal for their plan. One of them said that there would be drinks later, but initially they wanted to talk about an important matter. He asked if Huang was selling the sword that hung on his back because he was ready to give 100 silver for it. The hero took the sword in his hands and could not believe that a sword of such poor quality could cost so much. Then the warrior said that if the hero has something else he can show it and they will buy it for a price. Huang said that he had a sea bead and the warrior asked to see it to evaluate it. Then Huan gave his sword directly into the hands of the warrior and said that first he needed to buy his sword. With naive eyes, he asked if they had these 100 nannies with them in order to pay. But the warrior said that it seemed that the hero had heard his thoughts and initially the price was completely different. He said that he meant 100 iron mun, not 100 silver yen. Then Huang got angry and said that he remembers exactly what he said about 100 silver nyans. The other two warriors said that the price was originally 100 iron mun and they remember it exactly. Huang fell silent and just looked at the three warriors for a short time. Then the hero said that he was only 20 but he was already hearing in the wrong place. After this, the warriors changed tactics and one of them said that the hero could leave only if he gave up the sea bead. After that, he began to say something about the guarantee that he could offer Huang. But it seems that the hero was not ready to listen to the warrior since after half a second, he was already in a convenient position for an attack. He twisted the hand of one of the warriors and asked if he had heard correctly about the value of 100 silver coins. Then the two remaining warriors who stood at a short distance ordered the hero to release their comrade. But Huan, simultaneously holding the hand of one of the leg warriors, was able to strike the other two at once. Because of this, they immediately flew into the wall of one of the buildings with great speed. The hero then jumped even closer to them in order to deliver an additional kick to their stomach. After this, he turned to the first warrior and asked if he remembered correctly about the price of 100 silver coins. He bent his hand and made his sword, which was in the warrior's hands, move a little. This movement then lifted the sword off the ground right next to the warrior's eyes. And then with great speed this weapon flew into the hands of Huang, and he asked the warrior whether he would answer. After all, he was really interested in whether Huang was right that the announced price was 100 silver coins. All the warriors knelt down and asked Huang for forgiveness, agreeing that the price was 100 silver coins. The hero said that it was good that at least in this way he was able to return their memory to them. Then he began to collect money to get his 100 silver coins, but the warriors had less. Having collected all the money from each warrior, Huang collected 60 silver coins, and he ordered the warriors to empty their pockets. Then all three warriors began to take out absolutely everything they had and put it on the floor. Then Huang said that simple-minded people like him should beware of the scammers of Hangzhou. At this moment the warriors thought that they would argue with the hero's innocence. But when they saw that the hero turned to them and threatened with his fist, they immediately said that they should always be careful with thieves. I told you that since this is the case, the soldiers can give 40 silver coins later. All three warriors thought that they managed to save 40 silver, but Huang said that the payment must be correct. Then the hero said that he would stay in Hangzhou for a short time, so he would visit all the warriors in a couple of days. I'm about to leave. He saw some kind of wooden tablet on the floor that was in the pocket of one of the warriors. He quickly picked it up from the floor with such speed that even the warrior did not have time to pick it up. Huan managed to quickly take it into her hands in order to examine it. She looked at it from all sides and tried to understand why wind was written on it and what it meant. Then the warrior said that this tablet was not special at all, and the hero said that since it was not special he would take it for himself. And at that moment memories came to the warrior which were quite fresh. After all, it was he who was then in that very alley. He was the one who met one of the pickpockets in the alley while he was running from the mysterious warrior. And with the help of a long stick, he managed to stun the enemy and begin to examine his pockets. And when he examined his pockets, he found nothing valuable except some kind of wooden tablet. But when he saw what the sign was and what was written on it, he realized that the catch was quite valuable. The pickpocket's henchmen began to disappear one by one. And that's as many as 40 people. It seems to have something to do with the mysterious warrior's wallet. Looking at the three warriors who were kneeling, Huan decided that it was time for him to go. He said goodbye to the soldiers, and suddenly one of them asked the hero to stay. After all, he was wondering why he didn't leave them the sword since they agreed. The hero remembered the sword and began to approach the warriors again. He threw one coin and said that he had changed his mind and the deal was cancelled. Then the warrior said that Huang should give them the money, but the hero replied that what he gave to the warriors would be enough. The warrior said that the price was originally 100 silver coins. Huang said that he remembered, however, the warriors also claimed that the price was 100 iron coins, and that's why he gave them that much. Leaning towards the soldiers, he said that the calculation must be honest. One of the warriors said that Huang was right, and the other two thought that they had fallen for a real swindler. When leaving, the hero thought that at this rate he could easily become a rich man very quickly. Huang came closer and closer to the commune estate near which there were guards. The sign that was supposed to notify everyone present about what kind of estate this was quite huge. Standing in front of the entrance, the hero was thinking about why his father even picked up his mother who lived so well here. But the guards standing near the gate did not quite understand this remark and looked at the guest in surprise. When the hero came closer, they asked him to stop and tell him the reason for the visit. Huan said his name and asked if Yung Ho lived here. One of the guards asked if the stranger knew the gentleman, and he replied that the gentleman was a friend of his father. Seeing that the guards were not reacting in any way, the hero took 2 silver coins out of pocket 2 and said that he was paying for the drink. The guards immediately took the coins and prepared to open the gate. Well, literally a moment later, the gentleman himself opened the gate, and he asked if it was true that his friend's son had come. Huang stood and said that he was the son of a friend of the master. Then the hero said that he had a very important conversation, so they should move inside. The elderly man first examined the hero from head to toe and then said that he should go inside. The hero was silently let in, and he walked into the building while inspecting the garden so that he was on the way. Finally, the hero came to the house where his mother lived. Entering step by step, he seemed to feel her presence. An elderly man opened the door and said that the hero could come inside. Having come here, the hero saw that there was already ready-made tea on the table, which the man immediately poured into the guest's cup. Then he asked Huang why he came and what the conversation was about. Then the hero asked if the elderly man knew a man named Yang Chun. Then this grandfather realized that in front of him was the son of his friend named Yang Chun. Then he said that the hero is actually very similar to his mother. Huang then said that he hoped that the old man would not say anything about him to his grandfather and uncle. The elderly man was very surprised because he did not understand why this should not be done. The hero said that he thinks that all his relatives most likely would not want to communicate with him. For Huang, it didn't matter who he was to the family. All the same, in addition to those who will be glad to see him, there will be those who will be angry. But suddenly the man called the hero his nephew. Meanwhile, in one of the distant houses, a man was putting incense into the ashes. He stood with his back to the entrance door to the room and watched them smolder. A ward approached him and he asked if he managed to find the target, and he answered negatively. When the commander asked him to search Haikdo, he said that they could be found by Chongfa. The commander said that he didn't care and the task still had to be completed. But then the servant said that even though the people from Chona are not at odds with them, but if a person from Kowloon finds out about this. At this point, the commander told the servants to shut up and listen to him. He ordered to first search all the brothels and find out if it was one of the Hikdo who managed to spend that kind of money in a few days. The subordinate again deviated and said that he would carry out this order at any cost. Huang meanwhile walked around the territory of this estate and examined the territory. Passing by one of the publications, he noticed two girls who were talking about something with each other. Coming closer, he noticed that they did not begin to whisper among themselves and look straight into his eyes. If the maids talked among themselves about the extraordinary beauty of the new one. And indeed at that moment Huang really looked very neat and beautiful. Coming closer to the street, he looked at the sky and saw that the weather today was even better than it was yesterday. But having walked a little further forward, he saw a man who seemed a little familiar to him. The hero immediately became interested in who this person was, but asking first was not very nice. This young man stopped right in front of the hero as he saw that Huang had also stopped. The stranger noticed that he had not seen the hero before and asked what his name was. Huang introduced himself and said his name, which also meant that he was new. The stranger said that he knew that in front of him was that mysterious type who lives on the island of a flying dragon. Huang didn't really like the way this stranger behaved and how he looked at him from above. Then he asked what the stranger's name was, and he introduced himself by saying that his name was Sama Chung. Chun asked the hero if he knows that he can't walk around here everywhere. The hero answered positively, and at the same time he remembered that in front of him was his cousin on his mother's side. Sama Chun warned the hero not to go anywhere, otherwise he would end up disgracing himself in front of the maids. Then he said that Huang could go and he was pleased to meet you, period. At that moment the hero decided to deviate. But as he was leaving, he heard that his cousin wanted to tell him something else. Without even turning around, he informed the hero that most likely the gentleman was out of his mind today since he let the hero in at all. At that moment, a small evil plan appeared in Huang's head. After all, most likely his cousin did not know that on the island of the flying dragon, seagulls often shit on the faces of those who look at the sky. A moment later, as Chun began to move further away from Huang, the hero released a small stream of energy in his direction. This energy flew into the stove that stood right in the path of the cousin. Because of this, she stood up and he slammed his foot into her with all his speed. Looking down at that very second, he realized that he had just almost fallen. But then Huan suddenly decided to help him and squeezed his hand, which was instantly reflected on his cousin. Then the Chion instantly twisted his arm and back, causing his center of gravity to be pulled forward. A second later, he fell at low speed straight to the floor, crashing his head into part of the lawn. When he stood up after the fall, he realized that he had fallen face first into a pile of manure. Huan continued to walk further, but still quietly tried to observe what was happening. The maids ran out of the building at the screams of Sama Chun and began to help him. Meanwhile, Huang moved to the training room where there were many weapons. In addition to martial arts here, you could also practice archery thanks to the targets. And in general, there were not so few people here considering the number of people in the building next door. The hero went up to the stand with spears to examine what quality they were. But as soon as he approached, he saw that a small detachment of warriors was moving behind him. It looked like they were guys from the Storm Squad, the weakest of the 5 squads of the Communist State. Well, it was not these warriors that attracted his attention since they looked very weak. He drew attention to the 2 warriors who were enclosing this group who looked quite confident. After a little training, Huang moved to the residence where his uncle was sitting, and the old man asked his nephew if they were going to tell him something. In response, Huan only remained silent, but over time he still had a question. He was interested in what his uncle thought about his father, and his uncle immediately said that the hero was very different from him. Then Huang said that if they are of the same blood and not very different, then perhaps he should be allowed here. The uncle thought about it, but after a few seconds he was overcome by emotions. The uncle could not understand how Father Wan could mock his son like that and could not forgive it. Huang told him about his childhood and what his father forced him to do, and even about the situation when his father threw him into the sea so that he would become stronger. The hero asked why his uncle suddenly decided to start this conversation. The elderly man replied that the hero should get down to business, having said that, in his opinion, Huang really wants to serve. Then Huan interestedly asked his younger uncle if he had a task for the hero. But then the uncle suddenly objected, saying that he was not the younger uncle. Huang in turn replied that his father told him completely differently. The uncle realized that it was not worth developing this topic further than a comma, and said that he did not know the reason why Huang was not working yet. Then the hero said that he was very happy to demonstrate his fighting skills. The hero's uncle asked if he was confident in his abilities and immediately began to think about where it would be better to conduct the test. Huang and his uncle moved to the training yard. They stood opposite each other and armed themselves with small wooden sticks. Li Mu looked at his uncle and waited, trying to predict what the attack would be. And the uncle in turn looked straight into his nephew's eyes and tried to find the right moment. After standing like that for a few seconds, my uncle said that he thought their fight was worth starting. Huang did not react to this in any way, as he was very focused on the enemy. The uncle squeezed his stick in his hands, because if Wu Huan manages to repel the attack, then he must not lose it. He became even more concentrated, and it even seemed to the hero that he began to shake. Then the uncle pushed very hard from the place where he was standing and moved towards Huan. He moved at lightning speed, but the heroes were still able to see all the movements. The uncle switched from side to side in parallel, delivering several blows with a wooden stick. But at that moment Huan didn't even blink his eye. All this was expected for him. With the help of his wooden stick, the hero easily blocked all these blows, even though there were many of them. After several short and weak blows, my uncle decided to strike vertically with all his might. Having blocked it, he even compromised a little as his foot went deeper into the ground. Uncle did not expect that Huang was such a professional fighter that he could repel all this. The hero in turn was 100% confident and perhaps even expected more from his uncle. At this moment time seemed to stop due to the fact that the two sides were thinking about what to do next. But Huan realized much faster and moved his stick to the side. At the same time, a chance was created to swing it as hard as possible. Since my uncle noticed this, he became seriously tense and prepared to repel the attack. The heroes stabbed him with a wooden stick directly towards his uncle. At that moment Zhang Ho was thinking about how best to block such a blow. But by quickly moving his weapon, he was able to block all of Huang's strikes. But then he noticed that the hero was preparing to deliver one stronger blow. And so it happened it was much more difficult for my uncle to block this enhanced blow. Because his uncle blocked this attack, a small wave of dust even appeared behind him. He was that strong. Looking at her, Zhang Ho said that Huang is quite good at martial arts. Then he smiled and said that he knew that thanks to his father, his nephew was so capable. Bowing, the hero said that this joke was quite funny. Then the uncle patted his nephew on the back and said that he was really talented and he could join the Sword of the God Squad, explaining this by saying that the Sword of the God Squad is a group of the best warriors of the communist state. But what Huang said was quite unexpected, because he asked to join another squad. He tried to argue that he simply did not want to join the clan that Chongha proposed. When his uncle asked which squad he wanted to join, the hero replied that he dreams of joining the Storm Squad. This phrase surprised my uncle very much, and he asked why the hero needs these losers. Huang replied that in his opinion it would be fun there, and that's the most important thing to him. The hero could not stay here for long. He would have been more comfortable among the bewitched people in the Storm Squad than in the squads of the Sword of the Gods. I also thought a little and then sent my nephew to the Storm training camp. As soon as he entered the territory of this camp, he immediately attracted a lot of attention. All the warriors were idle and therefore paid attention to the stranger who had appeared, and it looks like they weren't particularly happy about the new guest. Huang heard everyone start talking to each other about whether this was the guy they were hearing about. They didn't like Huang's cuteness and generally made fun of her mostly about it. One of them looked straight into the hero's eyes and immediately spat on the floor. This man pushed off from the wall on which he leaned his elbows and began to walk towards Huang. Approaching, he began to say that because he did not have a beautiful face, women did not pay attention to him. In response, Huan was silent for a short time and just looked at the warrior who approached him. And then the hero said that he was not at all to blame for this man's problems. The soldiers who stood behind this man, who turned out to be the commander, quietly made fun of him. But when the commanders turned to face them, they immediately quieted down and all conversations ended. Then the commander came even closer to Huang and called him a beast. The hero began to enter the building and asked if the commander would follow him. In response, the hero received several insults, after which he said that the commander had better cover his mouth. The man then started running with his fist straight towards Huang. Well, he picked it up quickly enough, and having struck, he didn't even have time to notice how the hero stepped aside. And while he was running past, the hero tripped him under his right leg. Having caught hold of it, the commander immediately began to fall straight onto the hard and cold floor. The force of the blow was not particularly strong, so he raised his face, which was filled with rage. The hero in turn simply looked at him and waited for him to calm down. The commander stood up, and he did not look like a calm person at all. Instead, he ran up again and tried to punch Huang in the face, but Huang caught his fist. The heroes got tired of playing, and he took the commander right by the throat. While he looked into Huang's eyes, he already thought that he was finished since the hero looked serious. The soldiers of the Storm Squad watched everything that happened as if it were a fairy tale because they couldn't believe it. After Huang grabbed his opponent's neck, he suddenly began to lift him up. He raised it until the commander's feet no longer touched the ground below him. The man wanted to say something, but he was completely unable to do so because of his tight neck. Then Huang said that he would report to the detachment commander about the commander's antics and then talk to him. After this remark, he threw his opponent directly to the floor next to him. And a second later, he continued to walk into the building to which he was originally heading. As he left, he remembered what they say: when you have an advantage over your enemy, you should show it to him. When the heroes entered the building, they initially looked around. The interior was quite ordinary for these parts, and right in the middle of the room, there was a long table with many chairs. At this table sat a rather impressive man who was reading something. Approaching closer to the table, Huan realized that this man was the commander of the Storm Squad, Nakol Y. And he said that he was quite impressed with the newcomer because the commander of that detachment was not such a weakling. The hero took his leave and said that he had received assignment to the Storm Squad. First of all, the commander decided to ask whether it was true that this Huang was Zhang Ho's nephew. Then Nachiol Y said that he didn't look like his uncle at all. Huan laughed and said that he didn't have to be like him. Well, then the storm commander said that he didn't want there to be a lot of noise from the newly arrived warrior. Huang said that he is quite silent, and if no one disturbs him, he is quieter than water and lower than the grass. The detachment commander looked at the guest again and made a conclusion. He said that if Huang makes too much noise, he will be reprimanded, so we need to try and behave according to orders. Huang took his leave once again and said that soon the squad would become calm. This phrase made the storm commander smile because he was very interested. This guy seemed quite interesting to him, and he believed that his squad would definitely not get bored with him. Leaving the office, Huan thought that it was quite unexpected that this detachment was stronger than he initially thought. But suddenly circumstances forced me to stop thinking about anything. There was an entire division of warriors standing in front of him, and they seemed to be in a negative mood. The hero said that if they are going to attack, then they should do it together since he wants to rest after the journey. The warriors began to shout and say that a newcomer should not think so well of himself. The hero came up with a dispute and proposed a battle during which the one who wins will punish the loser. The warriors were even more angered by this newcomer's confidence and did not like these jokes at all. Then Huang said that he did not insist on anything. One of the warriors said that they agreed to these conditions, but the promise would have to be kept. The hero said that he is not one of those who does not fulfill his promises and offered to begin. Meanwhile, it was only 1100 in the morning, but the sun was already shining very brightly on everything around. One of the warriors took out his metal clubs and prepared for a duel. He introduced himself saying that his name was Han Chogang, and he was the commander of the 3rd Division of the squad. Everyone stood around Huang as if creating a small space for battle. Having prepared a little, the enemy moved into battle waving his clubs. But this did not impress Huang, as he quickly managed to dodge 2 attacks at once. In turn, he took his sword by the sheath and came up with an ingenious plan. He did not take the sword out of its sheath and decided to use it as a wooden stick. So he moved as close as possible to his opponent and prepared himself. Approaching the maximum, he took out the sword that was in its sheath and struck. From this blow the thug and the commander of the 3rd unit flew several meters away and slid along the ground. The soldiers who watched this were half scared and the other half angry. The commander whom Huan had humiliated earlier was especially surprised. The hero straightened his back and said that he was ready for the next fight. The warriors drew their swords and said that they would not be afraid to attack all together. But Huan was ready for this. He had enough combat experience to resist it. When several militants carried out their attacks at once, Huang first dodged everyone and then took aim. He delivered several targeted blows to the bodies of his opponents at once, causing them to fly to the side. When they fell, the remaining warriors, looking at their immobilized bodies, could not believe it. Then they decided that they needed to simultaneously attack the enemy in a huge crowd so that he would not have time to fight back. The commander of the entire storm squad watched all this and seemed pleased. He was very interested in this situation, and most of all he was interested in the result of the fight. Looking out the window, he watched as Huang easily dealt with the tops of his opponents. Screams could be heard throughout the entire training yard for a long time. Those same screams continued an hour later, but not because of the battle. Huang shouted that it was shameful that those who studied martial arts for 10 years could not take the Mabu stance. The hero's task was for one half of the warriors to squat with their brothers on their shoulders. At the same time, while sitting on the roof, he shouted that someone at 8 years old could stand like that for 2 hours and was holding 60 kilograms of stones. Huang won the fight and stated that the loser would have to carry the other on his back for a very long time. Then he ordered to squat in the Mabu position. It seems he had a plan, since he came up with such a not severe punishment. During the squats, he tried to motivate the soldiers by saying that they were men and should be able to carry a comrade who had been wounded. The soldiers stood like that for more than an hour, and by that time everyone's legs began to give way and their entire bodies began to tremble. Although the comrades who were sitting on their backs wanted to sit like that longer. They didn't look tired at all. An hour later, Huang said that there was a little more left and the soldiers needed to stay in this position for another half hour. Half an hour later, it was all over, and the soldiers who were holding their comrades sighed and realized that they could not feel their legs. Then the hero, with a smile on his face, said that now we need to change, and those who were resting will stand for another hour and a half. Some soldiers tried to leave, but Huang returned them to duty only after noticing this. The detachment commander watched all this from the window and laughed. He liked how the hero behaved. But then someone besides the soldiers who were training also entered the training camp. There were 2 of them, and they were very surprised when they realized that no one was there. Then they went inside and asked one of the warriors why it was so quiet here. When they looked around, they had a second question, and they already asked where everyone had gone. The soldier, as he was expiring, then said that everyone had simply worked too hard, and this answer greatly surprised the arriving trainers. At the same time, Huang, who was the culprit, came down from the stairs. One of the coaches asked who it was because it was the first time he had seen him. The soldier replied that he was a newcomer who had just joined the detachment. Then one of the training realized that this newcomer was the nephew of their head. When the hero locked eyes with the coach, he didn't understand anything. And since the face did not seem familiar to him, he immediately looked away and began to leave. The trainers concluded that this new guy somehow looked too good. While Huang was opening the doors to go outside, coach told his friend that it was worth teaching this newcomer a lesson. But the soldier thought that one of the trainers named Chapa Sung was digging his own grave with this action. Chapa went up to Huang and told him to follow him and not ask questions. The hero silently followed him, not understanding the meaning of this and who the guest was. The soldiers who were watching this realized that something interesting was waiting for them, since Commander Cha took Huang. The commander of the entire storm squad gathered everyone to make a statement. He notified that he was going to create a new unit, and he had already chosen a commander for it. This commander will be Mu Huan. Everyone was very surprised to hear this, especially Coach Cha Pa. The heroes bowed and asked how he should choose members for his unit. Then the detachment commander said that he could choose people to his taste. At that moment, all the soldiers who were present were praying that they would not be assigned to the Huan unit. Well, look at everyone present. The hero said that over time he will choose at his own discretion. Meanwhile, in the city that lay nearby, night had fallen and many of the population were sleeping. But nevertheless, the lanterns on the street were burning, as were the lanterns at the entrance to one of the half-abandoned buildings. In that building there were several people lying on the floor who were immobilized and could not move. The leader of the bandits said that among all these people there is no one else like him. After that he asked his servants where else and they weren't looking. Then one of them said that he did not think that they would be able to find the target because they had checked almost everything. Then the leader of the bandits said that it would take a lot of time to go around all the provinces. The second servant said that it was better to mobilize more people since Hikdo would do little to help the captain take control of Hangzhou. Then the leader of the bandits said that the servant had better shut his mouth if he did not want to die. Then the servant realized his mistake and bowed and apologized. And the leader in turn said that if he were a captain he would immediately cut off the head of this servant. In the Kamuna training camp morning came and everyone slowly woke up. Huang woke up later than everyone else and opening the doors decided to go out to the training grounds. When he opened the doors and all the soldiers saw him they immediately became very tense. Only the hero rubbed his eyes and all the soldiers had already fled to different buildings. Literally a few seconds later there was no one in the entire area of the training area. It's been 5 days already. As soon as Huang saw the rest of the storm members, he said that he was going to choose someone for his unit through a competition. However, the problem was that the fight continued until the opponent hit his head on the floor 3 times. One day a subordinate approached the head and said that he didn't like the way the hero was doing things and other commanders wanted to kick Huang out. Then the head of the detachment said that he would expel from this detachment only those whose skills were not good enough. However, not all Storm Squad warriors avoided Li Muhuan. There was a small group of those who were ready for constant suffering and improvement of the body. They were much more professional warriors than everyone else in the unit. And then Huan realized that now he had someone to work with and soon it would smell like something was fried. Very soon after 3 days he came to one of them, Yong Ho Sun, and he proposed to equalize the forces. But it seems that this warrior was busy with something completely different and did not agree. And he said that they could do without it since he didn't want to fight right now. Yes, the hero turned around and said that if he chickened out then he should say so. When he saw that this guy was starting to chicken out he said that it looked like he needed a sword to cut onions. Yong Ho Sung agreed with Huang's terms and said that he would soon regret his words. In response a grin appeared on the hero's face as he was confident in his abilities. Literally a moment later Yong Ho Sung had already lost the fight but he felt that this time he held out longer. And after this warrior the hero visited the other 3 commas and the result of the battle was the same. He easily managed to deal with each of them without much effort, and thus these 4 warriors came to the Huan every day to fight. Even though they always lost they still had hope and every day they became stronger. One day when they came to the hero they heard Huang say that today all the warriors are completely confident. Yong Ho Sung drew his sword and said that today they as a team are truly ready. Then Huang said that the best way to resolve this issue would be an argument. He said that if that team having piled on all together did not win then in that case they would become his subordinates. And all the team members leaned over each other and were generally confident in their abilities. Then they raised all their weapons at the ready and Young Ho said that they were ready to fight. The hero clapped his hands and said that then the battle should begin right now. And at that very second all 4 warriors attacked Huang at the same time. The speed was incredible. The leader of the bandits at that moment was very angry because of what he read in the letter. He really didn't like that he couldn't contact his informant. Only after finding a military ID can you contact the smoker since the letter must have a seal, and because of this a lot of blood had to be shed. When one of the leader's subordinates said that they would soon find the target, he threw a letter at him. This letter picked up quite an impressive speed and crashed straight into the man's forehead. After that, a piece of paper fell to the floor with the same high speed. The leader of the bandits said that his subordinates are corpses if they cannot find the target, and blood began to flow from the forehead of one of his subordinates. The leader turned to face the henchman and said that the task must be completed even if thousands of people had to be killed. Meanwhile, the lone warrior was walking from training to his hangar to rest. But on the way he saw Huang in front of him and was very surprised. The hero fled, and when the soldier asked where he was in such a hurry, Huang replied that he wanted to meet his uncle. At that moment the warrior insincerely told Huang to return and the hero wished him good luck. When the warrior walked a little further, he saw a very frightening picture. All 4 of the strongest warriors from the hero's unit lay defeated in his backyard. Meanwhile, Huang ran as fast as she could, as she had forgotten the way and often got lost. Approaching one of the passages on the wall, he could not remember whether this was the right entrance. He couldn't understand where he was, but he also didn't want to admit that he was lost. But still, after passing, he saw in front of him an old man standing near a crystal-clear pond. He was simply silent and looked at the water, and at that moment an idea came to the hero. He decided to run up to the old man and ask him the way to his uncle. But when I got close enough, I realized something very quickly. And this realization shocked him for a short time, but it's good that he came to his senses. Some brown energy began to move in his direction, and the heroes prepared to repel it. Then Juan realized that we were taking him into a forbidden territory, and he realized that he had to slip through quietly. Well, then the old man said that the hero should not move, and at that very moment the brown energy stopped. She hovered in the air and turned from directed energy into a pile of dirt. The heroes calmly exhaled as they realized that the danger had passed. Then Huang heard that grandfather said that his daughter loved this pond very much. He also told the guest in his memoirs that red fish used to live there. Well, after his daughter left her grandfather, all the fish died after her. This slightly touched and tensed Huan, since the story was similar to the one he learned. Because he was ready to fight with unknown energy, just now his fist was clenched, but he soon relaxed. Then he told the old man that he believed that this happened because the fish were not fed. But the grandfather replied that they were fed, but the fish did not eat their food and died a month later. Then Huang said that if his daughter found out about this, she would be sad. The old man said that the hero was telling the truth and she would be upset if she were alive. Once upon a time he became angry with her, and the next day she silently left the commune. Huang asked whether the old man regretted this, but the grandfather did not understand and repeated the question. The hero once again asked whether the old man regretted forcing his daughter to leave him. After all, Huan heard that his mother also loved fish, but unfortunately he was only 3 years old when she died. He told the old man that he lived with his father on the island and he never caught red fish because his mother loved them. At some point it was only necessary to hold out a little, then perhaps the mother would now be next to her son. The old man did not understand what the stranger was telling him and could not put the puzzle together at all. Then the hero said that if today was not his mother's birthday, then after a couple of days he would have left this place. The old man was very surprised by the coincidence because today was also his daughter's birthday. Then the old man realized that his grandson was in front of him. When he realized this, he just silently looked at Huang for a while and thought about everything. After that, the old man and his grandson went to the building in which that grandfather lived. There Huan told his whole story, taking into account how he ended up on the island and began to live with his father. After all this, the old man asked what the hero's name was, and he introduced himself. After this, the grandfather said that Huang should not leave here. Then the hero replied that he was absolutely comfortable in the storm squad. He argued this by saying that he would definitely be better off in the circles of the detachment. The grandfather thought that it seemed like Huang didn't want to bother the other family members, and he also noticed that he is very similar to his mother. Then the old man said that he understood everything and asked Huan to notify him if the heroes didn't like something. After all, in fact, these walls are the true home of the hero. The hero was a little confused when he heard these words, but after that he said that he understood everything and would contact him if something happened. Leaving the building, Huang was very inspired as he really enjoyed talking with his grandfather. He didn't even think that his grandfather was such a wonderful person in reality. Although passing by the tree, he said that it was good that his grandfather was so simple-minded. But then, out of the corner of his eye, he noticed that someone was sitting on the branch of this tree. It was some man who in response looked straight at the hero and held a sword in its sheath. After that, Huang said that it was better for the stranger to get down from the tree if he didn't want to get a scolding. But in response, this warrior said nothing but only mumbled something quietly. After that, he turned his back directly to Huang as a sign of disrespect. And then the hero couldn't think of anything better than to kick A on the pillar of this tree. The warrior staggered and felt that the branch was becoming unstable. Within a second, he jumped to the ground and found himself a meter away from the hero. The stranger said that Huang was acting very funny and amusing. The hero said that he was the commander of the storm squad and asked who the stranger was. Then this warrior introduced himself and said that his name was Samagon. This was the eldest son of the head of the family, Samsung-un, one of the hero's cousins on his mother's side. There was a grin on his face, and then Huan realized that this brother wanted to fight. The warrior ran up to make a quick attack, and he ran as close as possible. He began to take out his sword to cut the hero with it. but suddenly some invisible force stopped his sword. Looking down a second later, Sama Gon noticed that it was Huang's hand. The hero stopped his opponent's sword and said that it was better for them to avoid trouble. And it seems that after seeing this, the enemy no longer had any ideas. He helped put his sword deeper into its sheath, which meant that there would be no fight. Having done this, he said that he did not know that he was so weak because he wanted to be stronger than he wanted. Huang said that he is a pretty strong guy. Then he asked what he was doing on the tree. She herself answered that there would be a beautiful sunset today, so he wanted to look at it. He wanted to place this sunset in his sword and use it to cut the rising sun in the morning. It sounded like a complete fairy tale, so the hero said that she herself spoke about it very beautifully. Then Sama Gang began to leave, and Huan realized that he had not told him everything yet. He shouted after him that it would be best to go to the shore because from there the morning sun can be seen much better. He advised the warrior to go to Chanshan, and at the end of the road look into the Sanhara tavern that would be nearby. Voin was very grateful to the mysterious stranger and then asked his name. Don't think for a second about the hero introduced himself and said that his name is Li Mu Huan. Gon herself was very surprised and asked if it is true that they call him the devil in the area. But Huan only turned away from the person he was talking to because he was slightly embarrassed. After this, the warrior began to leave and said that after they saw the rising sun, he would return to the hero. But Huan didn't really like this since the company of such people rarely interested him. That night Sama Gon left the Koman estate, leaving behind a note saying that he would return after cutting the sun. Meanwhile, a battle took place on the other side of the city near the forest. It was unequal, so the soldiers whose numbers were much larger lost to the bandits. One of them said that if the soldiers had answered the questions, he might have left them alive. After this, one of the warriors dealt a decisive blow to the last survivor. And then he began to sheathe his sword while looking at the lifeless body of his opponent. The leader, who was standing nearby, said that now only the enemies from Kwawandan and Childo remained. But eliminating all the enemies there would take too much time, and I didn't like it. One of the henchmen said that they would find out all the information as quickly as possible so that nothing would be revealed. The leader said that it was a pity that they were never able to find out who exactly did this in those provinces. After which he gave the order to his subordinate to go to Kwawandan, and he in turn will go to Childowa. The subordinate warrior looked again at the lifeless body of the defeated enemy, and after a second said that he would carry out the order. Meanwhile, the hero spoke with the commander of the entire storm squad. He said that he would need security in Tahana because he needed to help them transfer money. Then Huang said that he agreed if after completing the mission he was given a separate assignment. The squad leader ignored this and said that the mission must be completed without stupidity, and the hero agreed. Huang and his small team moved into the city for further instructions. Then Huan asked Yong Ho if he knew people who had swords with 7 signs. He replied that the hero was talking about Childog and asked why the hero was asking about this. After this, Huang proudly declared that his father should give him money and not small ones. And then he said that first they need to finish the work in Tahana and then move on to other tasks. As soon as he finished this remark, he heard a horse rush past at great speed. This horse was alone, and with its own strength it pulled the carriage in which someone was sitting. On the roof of this carriage was a golden figurine in the shape of a dragon. All the people who were walking down the street at that moment paid attention to her. And Huang's group was no exception. Their eyes were glued to the carriage. The hero looked inside the carriage to see who was there and was impressed. It became clear to him that there were 2 women sitting there, one of whom was a mother and the second a daughter. But most of all, he paid attention to the girl who was sitting next to this woman because she looked simply beautiful. One of the hero's warriors said that he was wondering where the Yonghua family's carriage was in such a hurry. The hero asked what kind of Yonghua family this is and who they are. The Yonghua family is one of the main forces in Hangzhou. Before the appearance of the Commune estate, they were the most powerful. When Huan said that he noticed a beautiful girl in the carriage, Yong Ho immediately asked if he had a hairpin with a phoenix on his head. Then the warrior said that he had only heard rumors about her, but in general everyone knows about the beautiful Yonghua. After which he warned the hero that he shouldn't make eyes at her, and it's better to drop this matter. All because this beauty has a fiancé. Huang immediately asked who he was. After that, Yong Ho Sung said that this groom is Crown Prince Hakion. Since the hero knew absolutely nothing about this man, he decided to ask a member of his squad. But having not received an answer, he asked if this was a strong warrior, which surprised all members of the squad. Yong Ho said that this prince is one of the dragon gods of China. But the hero only said that since all the dragons had died long ago, this was a fable. Then the whole team moved to another building. There was no particular reason for this, but Juan said so. He had not been in such beautiful buildings for a long time and could not understand whether it was a beer hall or a royal palace. There were very beautiful girls everywhere here that the hero always looked at. But suddenly he felt that someone was watching him and therefore decided to look around. On the top floor, he saw a man who was looking straight at him with a very piercing gaze. This man's face seemed familiar to him, and it was slightly annoying that he did not look away after discovery. But the heroes looked away when one of the members of his squad said that they needed to go. Yong-ho asked his commander if he had seen an acquaintance, but Hwan replied that he had not, and he was just interested in something. Then he told his squad to quickly enter the room because the task needed to be completed quickly. Walking inside, he turned around to look at the table at which that man was sitting. And when he looked there, he didn't see anyone with anything. This man seemed very familiar to the hero and at the same time dangerous. Meanwhile, this man had long since left the pub and was walking along the street. Huang decided that later he would need to find this man and talk to him. Entering the room in front of them was a man who placed two small chests in front of him and hit them with his smoking pipe. He said that nowadays there are many who are encroaching on someone else's silver, so he is not sure whether he can trust such work. And in general, he didn't like that the Storm Squad sent reservists on this mission. The hero said to himself that he didn't really like this old man. And my grandfather in turn smoked his pipe and thought about how to resolve this situation. Then suddenly Huang said that if grandfather is not happy with something, then let him carry his own load. Wish the man got angry and told the reservist to watch his language when speaking to him. The hero said that he would be grateful if he lowered his finger, otherwise he would break it. Then Yong-ho took up the conversation and said that they were here on business and not to listen to lamentations. The older man said that from now on he would only talk to the commander since the reservists had absolutely no idea what they were carrying. Then Yong-ho said that they were the new 13th squad. Everyone saw that the grandfather knew nothing about it. But after a few seconds it dawned on someone that the new 13th squad was headed by a demon. After these words, Ho Sung said that the gentleman who stands in front of him is the commander of this detachment. Then the hero leaned over to his grandfather and said that if he did not trust them with the job, they would simply leave. At first, the elderly man didn't know what to say, trying to connect words into sentences. But after some time, the hero was already walking down the street and throwing a bag with payment for services. The bag was not particularly large, but inside it there were only silver coins. The amount was quite good. The hero made the assumption that there were about 10 silver coins. When the official found out who Huang was, he silently handed him the cargo and wished him good luck. The hero said that when they finish with the building, they will be able to eat well together with this money. But Yong-ho said that if the commander wants to find Childo, then they need to go to the inn what is on the road. Having walked along several streets, the detachment eventually came to the Kaiman mineral shop. And also everyone noticed that near the gate of this money changer stood a painfully familiar carriage. Everyone noticed that at the very top of this carriage was the same golden dragon. The hero made a bold assumption that this was the carriage of the Yonghwa family. And then Huang also made another assumption, saying that it looks like they also need to transfer money here. Young-ho didn't really like how events turned out for him, but still resigned himself to fate. The warrior said that money changers do not only this but can also lend money. The Yonghwa clan was mainly engaged in maritime trade, and not long ago their 2 ships sank. Perhaps they want to borrow. When we got close to the gate, a member of the squad who had been carrying 2 chests all this time threw them on the floor. The hero said that it was not easy to get here, to which the man who was carrying the chests said that he had brought the load. Huang said that he just said that and there is no point in looking for meaning in it. At the same time, the hero also noticed that Young-ho had noticed someone, and because of this he turned his head away. Therefore, he turned his head in the direction where the member of his squad had been looking before. You saw that the girl who was in the carriage was leaving the building along with 2 bodyguards. This girl really had inhuman beauty, which immediately blinded the hero. He actually smiled when she walked past him. But then he noticed that Young-ho was very nervous. In her presence, something was wrong. When the girl passed by, noticing the group, she did not change her speed, but when she saw Young-ho, she practically stopped. One of the bodyguards asked her what was the matter, but she did not answer. She just looked towards one of the squad members and opened her mouth in surprise. At that moment, Yong-ho told his commander that they needed to leave quickly in order to make it in time. But when they left, the girl asked the leaving warrior whether he was the son of Araby. The warrior heard this first. He stopped, and then he said that he'd better go. But Hwan stopped him by the shoulder and said that he still needed to stay. It was clear from Yong-ho's face that he didn't want to stay here at all. The hero said that he doesn't know what happened between them, but he won't be able to run away from problems. And also, in a whisper, Hwang said that he sees when a person suffers alone and simply cannot look at it. Hwang added to his answer by saying that if he thinks that nothing will be resolved, then it's worth a try. After this, the hero said that he had already turned 20, and since he was an old man, he no longer understood what he was talking about. After that, he asked the girl if she knew a member of his squad. After thinking a little, the girl looked towards Yong-ho and said that she knew him well. Then Hwang said that he was leaving the two of them alone for a short time, after which he approached the bodyguards and said that the three of them needed to go out and talk for a while. I saw that the topic with which I did not want to answer at all. He said in a quieter voice that they should go. One of the bodyguards, who was most likely the commander, was silent for a long time, but then he finally spoke. Looking at his comrade, he said that it was best for them to follow him. After all, he doesn't think that he can avoid this conversation, and his comrade should understand this. Then one of the bodyguards looked at Young-ho and said that he had changed a lot during this time. And he also said that he would give him a little time to think about the old times of the Young-ho family because it would be better for him. Young-ho and Wayo got engaged when they were still very young. However, after the ruin of Young-ho's family, the two began to grow apart. Young-ho thanked one of the girl's bodyguards and said that it had been going on unnoticed for a long time. Then Hwang shouted to the bodyguard that if they had already finished chatting, then they needed to move away. The day was quite bright at times and the sun was shining very strongly. The hero moved a considerable distance away from the two lovers and said that the weather today is quite clear. Then the bodyguard asked the hero if he wanted to talk about something. Hwang said that they are very slow-witted and it is obvious that those two want to talk without prying eyes. He explained that he was saying this not because he was a member of his group, but because he knew that he was a good person. This made both bodyguards very angry, but most of all the one who was larger in size. At that same second, he began to point straight towards the hero. Hwan did not expect such an action from an unfamiliar bodyguard, but he just watched as he approached him closer and closer, shouting something. When that man ran as close as possible, he extended his hand to grab the hero by the neck. Hwang was extremely focused at that moment and prepared to repel the attack. He connected his two palms with great speed, and because of this a wind current was created around them. This wind found direction and easily blew the bodyguard off his trajectory. He was thrown several meters, but he was still able to stay on his feet. He ran away and couldn't understand how this could happen. Hwang warned that next time he wouldn't be so lenient. This phrase made the bodyguard even angrier to the point that his eyes turned red. But the second bodyguard stood silent all this time, and finally he had something to say. In his opinion, the leader of the storm squad was trying to do something that he was not capable of. After this, he declared that he was the head of one of the branches of the Yanawa family named Hwa Chun-in. Then the hero said that his name is Lee Mu-hwan. At this time, the bodyguards were very surprised, and one of them, poking his finger in the face, said that there was a demon in front of them. This seriously angered his hero. He shouted at the top of his lungs that everyone around him was already sick of him. The storm squad watched from the sidelines, and someone didn't like the way Hwang behaved, and someone thought that the commander was really cool. The hero continued to scream because he didn't like realizing that he was so famous that he could no longer live in peace. Hwang was famous not because of his bad character, but because of his abilities. Everyone knew that he had beaten the entire storm squad. When Hwan calmed down, he asked Wachu in what he would do with that couple. But that man said that everything had been decided long ago and would go according to plan. Hwang said that he would have to wait a year. The bodyguard did not understand what he meant. After all, if they decide to marry Hakyeon, then they will have to do this only in a year. Meanwhile, the couple stood behind the fence and held hands, looking into each other's eyes. Yong-ho told his beloved that he would have to postpone the wedding ceremony until the winter. The girl could not understand at all what he meant. Van said that sometimes time can tell the truth, and perhaps it's even good that everything was transferred. Hwan overheard part of Young-ho's conversation. and realized that he would take the girl with him next winter. The hero said that the bodyguards may not believe, but Young Ho will rise to a high position in Kowloon next winter. Neither of the two could believe these words since they had never heard anything like this. Compared to Hangzhou, Kowloon is incomparable because Kowloon and Murim are the main forces of the country. The hero said that the bodyguards should wait, because Young Ho is better than the heir of Hakyeon who is hiding suspicious secrets. Kvachu looked at each other with his comrade, and on the whole they agreed. And most of all, the head of one of the branches of the Yonghua family did not like the fact that there were a lot of rumors about Hakhong. Then the bodyguard asked if the hero was familiar with Kowloon. Huang said that the surname of the owner of Kowloon is the same as his Li, and he can't say more. The bodyguards looked at each other again because they didn't know how to respond to this. Then one of them said that first we need to inform everyone about this young. By that time, the loving couple had left the building. The hero asked if they talked and if they had time to discuss everything. The girl thanked Huang for the opportunity to have this conversation and said that the conversation was successful. Then they started to leave, and Huang said that they needed to hurry so they would go. But Young Ho still didn't want to leave but simply stood still and looked at his beloved. When Huan noticed this, he shouted towards the warrior so that he would run faster. The girl watched with a smile as the group left and at the same time shouted at each other. They moved to the central street of the city where at that time of day there were still a lot of people. Young Ho said that they say that Jahildio are very cruel and even the people from Gango do not touch them. The hero said that he met several of them and they did not seem cruel to him. As they got closer to the building near their destination, they saw a flag with a 7 on it. Yong Ho said that this is Manbongnu, one of the 7 divisions of Childo. Passing by this flag, Yong Ho remembered that he had heard that the inscription on this flag was written by the monk Childo himself. Meanwhile, a man was in his office drinking alcohol from an expensive vessel. He asked his servant if someone was looking for him, and he answered positively. It was Mr. Hyun, and he said that he wanted to see who came to him. But when Hyun looked towards the main doors, he saw Huang already familiar to him with his team. The hero immediately noticed him and began to wave his hand as if to say hello. As soon as Huang approached the snake, he immediately reminded him of the money, and he in turn began to shout that he would not give anything. But then he drew attention to those who came with his acquaintance. Looks like this team wasn't too happy to see someone yelling at their commander. At this point, Hyun realized that this son of a bitch is the commander of the Storm Commune detachment. When he realized this, he immediately couldn't put together 2 words and began to stammer. Moreover, he was confused by the fact that the hero came up to him, hugged him, and told him to give everything he had. He then brought Hyun's hand closer to his eyes and asked if the pain in his wrist had gone away. Then the man said that everything was fine, and by the way, 2 of his friends would come very soon, but for now we can have lunch. At that same second, Huan sat down at the table and said that as he understood, all the food would be at Hyun's expense. A moment later, as the hero sat down at the table, 2 of Hyun's friends came to the tavern and said that there were few visitors. Approaching one of the tables, they noticed their friend and said that it was as quiet as a tomb. From behind, they learned that Huang was sitting on the bench in front of the table. This scared them very much, and at the same time they thought that it might be better to run away. He all got up from the table and said that he was very glad to see his friends. The hero stood up and said that he had been waiting for them for quite a long time and finally waited. Scars along with the cross-eyed one by this moment already realized how unlucky they were. Huang began to collect their money and noticed that before that they gave him 15 silver coins, which means there are 25 left. The hero presented it so that only 25 silver coins and they will disperse like ships at sea without interest. But as Huan said this, he suddenly felt someone's presence, the presence of a person for whom he had been waiting for a long time. And turning around, he made sure that it was him, but he didn't know what to do yet. The man quickly descended from the 2nd floor and approached the exit. The hero could not understand what this man had forgotten here and why he was constantly being pursued. Yong-ho noticed that the commander was looking at some man and asked what happened. The hero rose from the table and said that he had an urgent matter so he and the team would go. By this point, the efficient man had already exited the building and began moving down the street. He walked straight and gradually quickened his pace when suddenly he felt someone's energy from behind. Turning around imperceptibly, he saw Huang's group and wondered why this kid was always following him. When he turned the corner, he started to run and thought that he would meet Huang later and then he would cut his throat. He ran around a few more corners, after which he pushed off the ground several times, and thanks to this, he jumped over a nearby house. When the security came to the place where the mysterious man had last been, he no longer saw anyone. At this moment, he was only thinking about where his target could go. Yong-ho asked the commander why they came here at all, but the hero could not answer this. He only knew that the energy that emanated from this warrior for some reason seemed very familiar to him. Then he turned to his squad and said that they should go back to Manbana and eat. One of the squad members said that it might be better to eat at a tavern nearby so as not to have to drag so far. But then Huang said that everything in that establishment was free despite the fact that he promised to spend the money on food after the mission. But in the establishment to which they were planning to return, the hooligans had already begun to move away from the meeting with the hero. They drank alcohol over and over again in order to forget everything. Scar said that he would strangle this Huang with his bare hands, and that this is the first time he has met such a beaten idiot. Let's go inside the establishment. The hero said that as soon as he left, everyone started drinking. He notified everyone in the establishment that they had returned and were now hungry again. The three hooligans started shouting and insulting Huang over and over again due to the fact that they were not really drunk. Then the hero said that since his mood is already below par due to the fact that he missed the man, but now it's even worse, and the hero said that he knows 100% which of them is the blackmailer. But the hooligans did not understand anything at all, since apart from the inhibited brain activity they had not yet heard anything. Within a moment, a real battle began in this establishment in which Huang mainly hit his opponents. The bullies who stood on the side watched as the hero beat their friend. During this process, the hero noticed that someone ordered him to stop doing this. It was a man who was dressed in bright yellow clothes. He entered this building along with two bodyguards, and his face seemed familiar to the hero. He realized that the Chekhildagvi commander was standing in front of him, as this could be understood by his clothes. Commander Childo in turn asked who he had the honor of talking to and what the hero's name was. The hero struck a pose and said that his name was Li Mu Huan. The bodyguards who stood on either side of the Chihildagwa commander could not believe their own eyes. But by that time, several troops had already surrounded the hero's group. After looking around, he thought about the best way to conduct this battle so that it would be as effective as possible. The group was preparing for a fight, and even Yong-ho had almost drawn his sword. But then Huang put his hand on that warrior's shoulder and asked me to intervene. The heroes took several steps forward directly towards the Chekhildagwa commander. And the commander noticed that a huge amount of energy was gathering around Huan's hand, and now he would use it. The energy stopped becoming lighter and covering an increasing area of the hero's palm. The commander of Chekhildagwa knew that only true masters have access to such energy. I wonder where that one came from. And when the newly arrived man in a yellow robe saw that the energy around his hand was becoming brighter and tenser, he was tired of looking into Huang's eyes, and even the hero noticed that sweat began to flow on his face. Then the hero turned to him and said that he had a few words. Huang said that he had some business with his subordinates. But when the man looked at them, he said that he had given these three so many warnings, and he was grateful to Huang for teaching him a lesson. At that moment, the man noticed that the energy from Huang's hand had disappeared, which means he said what he wanted to hear. Then Huang asked why it was so difficult to have lunch at the tavern, and the man said that his subordinates did not know how to receive guests at all. After which he asked Huang not to worry, because now in a few seconds they will set the table to the highest standard. The hero asked if it was free, and the man said with a not loud laugh that of course he would pay for everything. Meanwhile, a battle was also taking place in a completely different tavern, and the side that defended used all available means to squeeze out. The thug who tried to fight back used a wooden table to cover himself from attacks. But one of the bandits was quite experienced, so he could easily dodge these blows. With the help of his sword, he constantly directed energy towards the enemy, and it was with the help of this energy that he managed to cut the wooden table into several pieces. When Gamala felt that the wooden table had shattered into pieces, she tensed slightly. The thug got angry and said that now he understood what kind of killers had been operating in the gateways lately. The bandit said that if the thug told the truth, he would let him live. The question was whether he was robbing the Black Bear clan. Such nonsense made the thug very angry, and he raised another table and said that he would kill all the bastards. He swung the table, and the bandit tried to cut it into pieces while still in flight. Well, part of the table still reached his face and caused a cut, which meant that the enemy was caught quite strong. But what motivated the bandit was that even if his identity was declassified, there was no way to retreat. Then he used one of the energy blade techniques to destroy the enemy with this energy. The thug hit another wooden table on this stream of energy, which created an explosion. Within a second, he saw the bandit trying to jump on him from a completely different direction. But at the last moment, the man notices a sword not far from him. At this time, the enemy is in flight and takes aim, trying to figure out how best to strike with a sword. The brute in turn easily blocks the enemy's iron sword at the very last moment. Resisting the bandit's power becomes more and more difficult over time, and after a few minutes the thunder begins to scream from the efforts made. But the bandit in turn only calmly looks into his eyes, imagining how he dies. The thug practically won as he managed to push the enemy and the sword further away. But he didn't even notice what happened. Blood surfaced right under his nose. The bandit retreated, but this time he was already right next to the thug. He stood in close proximity to his enemy and could not believe that he took the blow. And the man in turn only looked angrily at his opponent, who was standing under his feet. Suddenly the thug notices that a small puddle of blood has also appeared under his feet. Pay attention to the enemy's sword. He noticed that the bandit pierced his body with a magic sword. With the last of his strength, he tried to strike the bandit on the head with his right hand. Well, then the bandit plunged his sword even deeper and it went right through. This bandit, after everything he had done, stuck his sword back out, realizing that the battle was over. The brute in turn fell to his knees because due to the blood he had wasted, he was completely unable to stand on his feet. Finding himself on the floor, the Thunderous One asked the bandit why he killed him. Then the thief said that this would not have happened if the thug had clearly answered all the questions posed. At this point, his henchmen came to the leader and said that they were finished. The leader was even a little upset, and one could say that he even felt a little sorry for this enemy. He looked at his body or something on the floor and understood that the plan of action would now have to be built anew. Meanwhile, the action moved to the office of one very influential person. While here he worked and mainly analyzed and read multiple documents. It was the divine sword of the steep cloud Samosongan, and he spent a huge part of his life in the office. After reading one of the letters, he concluded that nothing could be done now. It was written there that in order to make the Cuman estate a Gentian province, it was planned to marry his daughter to the son of the Nangong family. Of course, along with the dowry. An assistant approached this man and asked if he had understood correctly that everything had not gone according to plan. And he replied that it would be more appropriate to marry his daughter to Nangong Ming. That would be more correct. Then the assistant said that according to rumors he was generally a good person, and the leader replied that this was no longer important because nothing could be fixed. The assistant suggested that this should not be done because if he pretends that nothing happened, then this will lead to enmity. The leader said that this is very important for him because he is marrying off his own daughter. They were silent for a while, and the assistant said that the best way would be to see everything with your own eyes and then make a final decision. Dream he really didn't want this, but nevertheless he understood that most likely there was no other way out. And soon an equally important meeting was organized for these same important officials. The officials will take Ha Young with them when they go to congratulate the head of Nien Gong on his 80th birthday. But the dream itself did not entirely agree with this, although it tried to listen to all the officials in the room. Then one of the officials asked who he was going to introduce himself as defenders. Dream itself wanted to nominate 2 younger brothers and 10 from the detachment of the Divine Sword and 20 and the Golden Sword. Then the commander of the Storm detachment said that the journey to Hefei would take at least 10 days. Therefore, we need to take more sentries. While other officials said that this could become a hindrance and a large number of troops would only be for the worse. Another official said that even among the Storm Squad there are first-class warriors that can be taken. But someone objected that this is not a matter of ability but of the importance of the task, and this should be entrusted to a very developed person. Another official said that if they cannot entrust this task to the Storm Squad, then why does it exist at all? Then the dream itself asked the detachment commander how many people would be enough, and he said that 20. After that, the Divine Sword of the Steep Cloud said that he had made a decision and 20 people would go. Meanwhile, Huang was walking around the training camp and looking for something to do. He simply walked along different alleys and hummed his favorite song, when suddenly one of the warriors ran up to him and said that Tezu was looking for the hero. And he told this soldier to have Huang come into his office with the other commanders. When Huang arrived in the room, he was the last one to sit down at the table. The commanders of the entire Storm Squad said that everyone everyone had already gathered and then they were ready to start the meeting. He said that they were appointed as escorts on the way to the Nangong family to congratulate the head on the anniversary. Huang was very interested in this information and it looked like he would like to go. One of the commanders asked how many people were needed and the storm squad leader said that 20 people were needed from their squad. The unit commander said that it is obvious that in this case they will get dirty work. Also, the commander of the storm squad said that he would choose some of the warriors for the task and some would be from the 13th squad. Then Huang said that he was not yet very experienced for such tasks and one of the unit commanders confirmed this. The commander of another unit said that Huang was already quite competent for this kind of task. After this phrase, the balagan began and the commander of the storm squad hit the table and said that the argument was over. Then Huang asked why only security guards are assigned to accompany someone on their anniversary. Then the commander of the storm squad said that he could not reveal all the information yet, but he could say that they would accompany Ha Young. Then the heroes realized that this was the name of the very beautiful girl they had met earlier. As soon as he realized this, he immediately raised his hand and said that he voluntarily agreed to this mission. Some unit commanders were happy that Huang was leaving while others simply did not want to serve with him. Before going on a mission, the heroes came to their grandfather and told everything about this mission. Then the grandfather asked if Okvin had told anyone else about his arrival. The heroes said that he did not do this, after which the grandfather asked whether he was really going to return to these walls. Then Huang said that this was not even discussed because this place was his mother's home. After a short silence, the grandfather also said that he would always wait for Huang here. After this, Huang promised that all the soldiers of his squad would remain safe and sound after the mission. Then the grandfather thanked the hero and told him to take care of himself first. But when Huang was about to leave, the grandfather remembered that he had a gift for his nephew. An elderly man walked up to his bed and opened a small cabinet so that it was under it. After digging around a bit, he finally found a small bag with gifts for Huang. It was a small scroll and also a small bag. Grandfather said that he bought all this in an antique store. Huang asked what these things were, but Grandpa replied that he himself was not sure what all this was for. When the heroes opened a small bag, they saw 3 metal parts there. Taking a closer look, he saw familiar hieroglyphs on the center of each of these details. Then the grandfather handed the scroll to his nephew and said that he tried to read what was written there, but he couldn't. Then the hero himself tried to open the scrolls in order to at least understand what it was about. What was drawn there was the silhouette of a man which was pierced by several lines. Well, look a little longer, Huang realized that everything is much more complicated. The picture showed the location of the veins, but rather how they disperse and gather along with a huge number of kugels. The hero looked at his grandfather and he asked if his nephew liked the gift. Huang said that he really liked this gift and would find a use for it. This phrase brought a sincere smile to the grandfather's face. Before Huang's appearance, he smiled quite rarely. Then he said that when Huang returns, the old man will give him something else. The very next day, Huang and the rest of his squad set out. When they were still walking in the city, he constantly talked with Young Ho about various topics. So literally an hour after they left the city, something was happening near the main gate. Some man ran as fast as he could with his sword in his hands, trying to keep up. When he got there, he told the guards that he didn't even realize it would take so long to get here. One of the guards asked who this uninvited guest was. The man said that he would like to meet with the commander of the 13th detachment and asked if he was inside now. The guard replied that the commander had just recently left the estate and gone on a mission. The man was upset and said that in this case he no longer had business with the commune. The man who came didn't like Autumn because he was almost a hair's breadth away from finding Huang. Meanwhile, on the road along which the soldiers of the storm squad were walking, it began to rain. Since it was boring, Yong Ho constantly asked the commander something. For example, has he been to Hefei before? Huang said no, and Yong Ho replied that he had been there twice but no good memories. The hero asked if it was true that the head of the Nangong family reigned there as the king, and it was true. The hero also wondered why Ha Yun herself was going to the Nangong family, but Yong Ho had no answer to this question. Then another member of the 13th detachment said that first the eldest and then the owner's daughter would visit them. At that moment, Yong Ho realized that this was all done for some kind of political move. It turns out that they want to marry her to Nangong for political purposes. Then Huang said that there would probably be people who would be against this process. And Yong-ho said that this is obvious because such a step is very desperate. But during this conversation Huang felt someone's presence very nearby. He told his squad to be more careful since you won't be able to get there quietly. A moment later unknown warriors emerged from the bushes around and the battle began. The battle began in front of the column and Yong-ho asked the commander if they should run in that direction. Then Huang said that we need to wait for Thatch's order since the enemies may not only be in front. The hero was bothered by the fact that not even a day had passed and they had already been attacked, which means someone reported about the campaign. One of the enemy commanders stood on a rock and could observe almost the entire field from here. His wards who continued from the back said that they managed to surround the entire column. Then the commander said that if the commune join forces with Nangong then the Chimerion will not be able to take a single step. They managed to find out where this column would go thanks to Gumcheong Shinmin. And the people from Gumcheon Shinmin were nearby and were ready to crush the remaining members of the Komen group. The enemy commander really liked this because everything went according to his plan. Warriors from 13 and other squads noticed that there was a small explosion in the sky. When they looked up, they saw danger approaching them with great speed. It was a huge cloud of arrows that rushed straight towards their bodies. One of the warriors began to shout for everyone to beware of arrows and find shelter. There were so many of these arrows that some of them hit their targets or even their enemies. Many arrows hit the carriage directly, most of them simply fell into the ground. Then the one who drove the carriage said that it should be protected by the Golden Sword Detachment, and the God Sword Detachment found the intruders. The members of the Golden Sword group, with the help of their swords, began to fight off the arrows that were approaching the carriage at low speed. Then this man gave orders to disperse in small groups to different sides of the road. The warriors listened and prepared to occupy the positions discussed with him. But in the meantime, the enemies ran as fast as they could straight towards the carriage from the low bushes. Huan asked Young-ho if he knew who was attacking them now, and the warrior replied that it was almost certainly Himeriong. The hero doesn't like this very much, and he vowed to tear every single enemy into pieces. He shouted for his small squad to run forward and destroy all enemies in their path. When Huan ran as close as possible to the opponents, he began to concentrate energy in his right hand. The enemies also ran towards him at high speed, and then he got ready. He directed this energy directly towards one of the warriors, which instantly threw him back. The second warrior also didn't know what happened, so Huang managed to throw him away too. By this moment, even more enemies ran up to the hero, but they were all stunned by Huang's abilities. One of them tried to make a surprise attack from nearby bushes, pointing his sword straight at the hero's head. At that moment, Huang decided to demonstrate his abilities and stop the blade of that sword with 2 fingers. At first, the enemy could not understand why he could not move his sword, but then he saw that the hero stopped him with his hand. But Huang's tricks did not end there, and a second later, he broke off a piece of the blade of this sword. After that, he took this piece and with its help eliminated the enemy who tried to attack unexpectedly. This blow came straight to the artery, so the enemy fell to his knees and said goodbye to life. The hero looked absolutely cold-blooded and was ready to deal with his enemies also in cold blood. He kicked his opponent in the chest, causing him to fly further into the bushes. His body flew so far that it managed to fly past 4 other warriors who were about to attack. But at that moment they doubted their toughness and thought about how best to retreat. But one of their units said that they needed to complete the task and not let the target escape. But then the soldier turned his head and saw the same Huang in front of him. He again concentrated the energy in his hand and said that whoever gets in his way will be a corpse. The battle continued and was quite fierce. The warriors of the 13th detachment showed themselves to be the most effective. They were able to professionally deal with several opponents at once. Even though their styles were very different, the result was the same. Despite the fact that they were thugs or very fast warriors, the enemies still flew off in different directions. During one of the fights, Yong-ho turned to his commander. He said that he believes that they need to help the squad that is protecting the carriage. This made Huan very angry, and he prepared to make a breakthrough to that very carriage. Pushing off from the ground and flying past the enemies, he threw them in different directions and moved towards the cart. As he moved, he created a stream of energy that scattered enemies further and further. The commander of the enemy troops could not understand what the hero was up to and how he was doing it. but he saw with his own eyes how Huang easily dealt with warriors with the help of this energy. Then he ordered the focus of all troops to be switched to eliminating the hero and not to the carriage. The warriors were all distracted and the group began to run towards him. Then the heroes again focused all their energy in one hand and prepared for a very strong attack. He raised his hand and sent it straight into a huge crowd of opponents. But better than this energy, it was not the entire group that came but only one warrior who stood in the center. But this is what the hero needed, since he pushed off from the ground and then pushed off from the face of that same warrior, and all in order to jump over all these enemies and move on. By that time, the carriage had already passed the field and reached the stone gorge. But why did they stop? Because some 3 opponents were on her way. Then the commander of a unit more elite than the 13th realized that the battle would be fierce. In front of him were enemies, one of whom was in a yellow robe and the second in blue. The one who was in the yellow robe began to run towards the communes, but the commander of one unit said that nothing would work out for them. Meanwhile, the enemy was getting closer and closer and prepared to tear the unit commander to pieces. Everything happened so quickly that he didn't even know how to repel this attack. It was probably better to jump to the side. But suddenly the enemy who was in flight heard a question. Someone asked what kind of scum wants to kill his girlfriend. At the same second, Huang flew into the enemy's foot, and the blow was quite strong despite the fact that he managed to block it. The energy that was in the hero's leg made him retreat a few meters, sliding along the stones. Then he raised his head to look at the one who dared to attack him. In front of him was Huang, and he was the only one who had no fear on his face. Then the commander of one of the units was very surprised that it was Huang who came to the rescue. The hero did not wait and jumped up to attack the yellow-robed opponents. The unit commander shouted that he needed to be careful, because in front of him was an Yu Byung, the strongest warrior of Kimchin, Shinmun. Having approached close enough, Huang was able to carry out the attack with a kick. And then Yu Byun realized that he was fighting the strongest among all the communities. Even though he blocked this kick, he still felt like he was falling through the ground. It became even more difficult and difficult to hold this blow with every second. And even after he managed to completely block the kick, the hero wanted to punch him. The rest of the enemy unit commanders watched this and could not believe their eyes. All this looked like a beating because Yu Byun very rarely managed to parry. He tried to keep track of the enemy who was moving at the speed of light. After a while, he realized that all he could do was simply dodge Huang's blows. Then he thought about why he was told that there were only weak ones in the detachment. After one of the attacks, the hero jumped straight onto the roof of the carriage. Then Huang said that they could all attack him at least at the same time, but if they try, he will kill them all. Then a woman's voice came from the carriage and asked if Li Mu Huan just said that. Then the hero replied that it was him, and the girls shouldn't worry since no one would lay a finger on her. After this, the commanders of the enemy units made an order to eliminate the girl who was inside. The one in green clothes approached, and the warriors prepared to repel his attack. But they did not take into account that he would not stop and would strike straight in motion. Because of this, they flew with great speed into a rock that was nearby. The unit commander, who was wearing a blue robe, also led the attack and noticed that the commune commander was also attacking. But he was very quickly able to dodge the enemy's sword attack. After he dodged, he sent the energy directly into the opponent's stomach through his hand. Because of this, he flew away, and the commander in blue prepared to tear the carriage into pieces. He began to concentrate energy in his hand in order to throw it against the rocks. He swung, and the energy almost began to leave his hand. But at the very last moment, he saw Huang's silhouette in front of him. He never managed to turn the carriage over because the hero struck with his energy much more quickly. And these circumstances made the blue-robed commander nervous. Another second after he lost his vigilance, Huan used his strength to throw him a long distance. At that moment, the girl who was sitting in the carriage thanked the young warrior for protecting her. At that moment, the heroes were ready to protect her and make sure that no one would lay a finger on her. At that moment, two of the enemy's strongest commanders jumped on Huang at once. But he was confident in his abilities and knew that he would finish them off before it got dark. He gathered all the energy in two hands and sent a powerful energy beam towards the two captains. They were in flight, so there was no way they could avoid it. The commander in the yellow robe covered himself with his hands, and the other one, who was holding a sword in his hands, absorbed all the energy in his body. When he looked back, he saw that Huan was already in a completely different place. The warrior Sina in my attire took his sword and tried to cut the hero in half. Well, Huan had enough time to get her own sword to begin with, When he took it out, he was easily able to block the blow of the enemy commander. The blow was so strong that even taking into account the commander's block, he flew to the side. While in flight, he simply could not believe that such a strong blow was so easily blocked. Then he realized that there was a real monster in front of him, just as they say in the legends. The green-robed commander attempted a very similar attack, but the hero was ready. When his sword was almost near the hero's body, another enemy commander shouted at him to be careful. But Huang was more focused than his enemies, and the fury did not cover him like a wave. He simply calmly drew his Kama sword and prepared himself. Then he struck directly at the enemy who was in the air and flying towards him. The enemy commander could not believe that this happened. The speed was unreal. But what surprised him most of all was that the sword fell into pieces from this blow. In his hands was a fairly high-quality sword for which he at one time paid more than 100 silver coins. And now it shattered into pieces, and the commander himself flew into the rock. He suffered quite a significant injury and blood started coming out of his mouth. The other two commanders ran up to help the commander whose name was Moon Hyung. I understand that they are at a good distance. The commander in blue decided that the best option would be to retreat. They began to run away along this gorge and at the same time carry their wounded comrade. The heroes could easily catch up with them, but at that moment Huang decided that this was unnecessary. He straightened the clothes that were hanging on him since after the battle everything had shifted. Then he realized that because of the haste in battle he was mixing two types of internal forces. His father would have scolded him greatly for this. Then one of the elite squads just arrived at the battlefield, which looked terrible. He asked how it all ended, and Taeju said that they were all alive only thanks to Li Mu Huang. The newcomer could not believe these words, since in front of him stood just a young man who looked like an amateur. Well then, the commander of the storm squad said that if he doesn't believe him, he should ask the squad for the golden sword. When he looked at several members of the squad, they nodded silently because they did not want to admit that they were weaker than some newcomer. The detachment commander said that first we need to help the victims and then get ready to leave. The squad leader Storm looked towards Huang and noticed that he was not engaged in combat. He stood near the carriage and kept talking to the girl who was sitting inside. By that time, one of the pickpockets was mortally wounded and was delirious. He lay leaning against the wall and could not believe that this was not a dream and was happening in reality. That mysterious warrior stood in front of him and asked who stole his wallet. The warrior assured the thief that he knew that his friends had robbed him and he needed to know who exactly. The thief didn't know. Then the warrior said that it's too bad that the thief doesn't know this, but it was worth it. After that, he took his forearm in his hands and began to squeeze. After that, he twisted this hand at the right angle, which caused unbearable pain to the thief. Then the warrior said that the thief just needs to tell who did it. It could be the minions of the Black Bear clan. After that, he began to describe the item that was stolen. It was not a wallet, but a small medal. By that time, the thief, it didn't take long to come to his senses and remembered the small medal he saw. The emotion on his face changed, and the mysterious warrior realized that he knew what he was talking about. The warrior said that he had a number for your medal, and if the thief told it, he would save his life. The thief said that there was a number for the mysterious warrior, raised his voice and said, "Who has this medal?" It was very difficult for the thief to speak, but still in a few tens of seconds, he managed to say that it was a poisonous snake. Then the warrior asked where this thief was now, and the thief said that he was near the bank of the Sparrow River. After that, he began to repeat poisonous snake over and over again. The mysterious warrior stood up and realized that he needed to look for a poisonous snake near the bank of the Sparrow River. Then he grabbed the thief by the throat and said that this once he would believe him. He lifted the thief with a comma, and he very quickly began to lose consciousness. Tears began to flow from his eyes, and at that moment he thought only about the eyes of the poisonous snake. About the eyes of a poisonous snake that were stolen by an evil spirit. This thief's life was over. After that, one of the thieves who was on the next street ran as fast as he could. He didn't understand how it was possible to kill people so cruelly. After all, only a real beaten scumbag and a demon could do this. That thief looked back to make sure that no one was running after him and no one was pursuing him. Just a few days ago, he managed to earn a round sum of money. Luck was on his side, and he very quickly decided to go home, promising the audience to pay for the food tomorrow. Then he walked through the night city straight to the place where the rest of the mountains were working. He managed to earn a lot of money, so he felt great. But when I approached the front door of the building, I saw something very frightening. Having looked closely, he realized that it was someone's hand and blood was flowing right from the threshold. He immediately leaned against the wall to look out the window very carefully. By that time, he still did not understand what was happening in this institution. All he saw through a small crack in the window were several corpses and also his dead friend. He heard that the mysterious warrior was talking with his last comrade and talking about some kind of metal. When he looked even deeper, he saw that the mysterious warrior took him by the neck and prepared to twist it. He remembered that warrior's face very well, and at that second an unpleasant fear came over him. Realizing that there was no one else to save, he began to run away and realized that he needed to find a demon who could definitely kill this warrior. On the way, he only remembered his friends and vowed to fight, and if necessary he would spend all the money to do so. In his opinion, only a demon could handle it, and he was ready to do anything to buy it. Meanwhile, the girl's carriage arrived at the building to rest. The commander said that the wounded must first be brought inside in order to provide care for them. They also moved all worthwhile items into the building so that they could not be stolen. All the wars rested after the battle near this building since everyone's strength was practically running out. Huang stood leaning against the wall of the building and looked intently at someone. It is obvious that he was looking at some person since he was very interested in him. It was exactly the girl from the carriage. Everyone around recognized her beauty, but the hero in particular. Now the perimeter was guarded not only by the Storm Squad but also by the Golden Sword Squad. Huan could look at Ha Young up close. When the girl noticed the guy, she came up and said that he should rest. But Huan didn't even have time to answer anything because a man appeared and told Ha Young that she needed to rest. When that man passed nearby, the hero thought that it would be nice to teach him a lesson. Then the girl thanked Huang for saving her, and the hero in turn said that he was just doing his job. Then she asked why he was called a demon, but the hero said that he himself did not understand, but most likely because of envy. Then a man got into the conversation and said that it was all because Huang was behaving too impudently and inhumanely and began to take the girl away. When the hero looked after them, he simply dreamed of kicking this man's ass. Then he noticed that the girl turned around and looked straight into his eyes. At that moment, Huang felt a very interesting feeling that was unlike anything else. He had a hunch that this girl knew something about him, but what exactly the hero did not know. He began to leave and at the same time think that everything around him was very strange. At this time, the chairman of the enemy commanders slammed his hand on the table. He was angry that the commanders could not destroy everyone and only the two of them returned. They didn't say anything in response because they understood that they had miscalculated the battle. Then the leader asked them if they knew what would happen if the Koman capital went to the Nangong family. One of the commanders said that if they had a little more information they would have won. Then the leader asked if they wanted to criticize him for his responsibility in the operation. If he had initially known that there would be such a strong enemy there, he would have mobilized all his forces. After that, he looked out the window for a while and said that next time they need to do the job right. And then he himself will enter the battle and the two of them will help him in battle. The two of them attack the front and make sure that the defensive units move away from the cart, and at that moment he will attack from the rear. The two commanders looked at each other in disbelief, but on the other hand, this plan looked quite effective. Meanwhile, some time passed and the group continued its movement. Today the weather was much better. Near the area where they were walking, one could notice a boat driven by a fisherman who was transporting something. Looking at this, the hero parroted the sound with which the oar touches the water and pushes off from it. Young Ho asked what kind of song this was. Awan said that this was the song that San and Pai sang. The warrior did not understand who San and Pai were, so he asked the commander to ask who it was. But the hero only said that they are not people and certainly not musicians. The whole group was very surprised when he said that these guys live in the water and are very beautiful dolphins. Having said this, everyone fell silent and the hero remembered Oji. He tried to remember what she looked like at the moment when they said goodbye. The most vivid memory of that day was the same kiss that Huan remembered before that day. The group continued walking, but then everyone noticed that Li Mu had stopped. After he stopped a second later, he told his little squad to stop. They immediately began to look around and Huang in turn looked in one direction. Yong Ho asked what happened, but Huan said that if something happens he will report everything to Taeju. In the meantime, we need to watch the rear. The feeling that the hero was now experiencing was a very unusual, and he did not know what to associate it with. He said in his group that somewhere nearby there were hefty enemies. There were two of them, so they must take on one of them. Meanwhile, the squad leader Storm walked near the carriage and looked in all directions. Suddenly he heard Huang tell him that the enemy had appeared and was somewhere nearby. Be that as it may, the enemy that was behind was strong, so it was necessary to get ready. He grabbed his sword and prepared himself. Huang told him to be careful. Very soon the enemy warriors realized that they had been spotted and went on the attack. The commander of the storm detachment ordered 3 people to help on the flank and the rest to go to the front. After he said this, he heard a familiar voice that said that they had underestimated the leader of the detachment. After that, some warrior tried to hit him with a sword, but the head was able to block it. Then Moon Jae-young said that this time the leader of the squad could not stop them. But the leader still had plenty of strength, so he was able to push the enemy back a short distance. Despite the fact that he lost his stamina at that moment, his comrade approached him and the two of them stood together. The leader of the squad said that nothing would come of it, and this time Moon Ha-kyung and his assistant would also be defeated. The warriors grappled in battle with enemy soldiers who were advancing from the bushes. A small consolation Huang was still waiting for a small unit that was supposed to come out of the bushes along with someone strong. The hero didn't even hear the rustle of a reed. It seems the enemy is stronger than he thought. He ordered the squad to be careful. If they want to survive, they need to find every soldier who is hiding. Then the hero noticed that the leader of the storm squad was attacked by 2 strong opponents at once. But he still managed to fight them off even though he spent a lot of energy. Huang concluded that even Taeju is not easy and it looks like he will have to work hard. Then another commander appeared in the bushes and ordered a small detachment of soldiers to kill every single one. The hero felt better because the corners were now visible and he ordered the squad to attack. His small squad began to fight with enemy soldiers and they did well. Their commander and chairman came closer to the hero and said whether this was the same freak in front of him named Huang. The heroes did not like this formulation at all and he tried to discern the enemy. The same chairman came out of the bushes to him. At that moment Huang did not yet know who he was. He asked what kind of freak was right in front of Huang. The commander said that such a kid as the heroes had too dirty a mouth. Huang retorted and said that the commander himself did not have a particularly clean mouth. Then the enemy got angry and said that he would now tear this impudent scum into pieces. Huang was very surprised that this opponent was an order of magnitude faster than all the others. But still he managed to block with his hand the strong blow of this commander's fist. The commander expected that the hero would be able to do this, but still Huang did it at the very last moment. The commander looked at him with a smile now. He was just trying to understand what kind of power his opponent was. After Van managed to block this blow, an explosion occurred. And because of him, the commander retreated a few meters since it was he who created it. When he looked straight, I was very surprised because I didn't expect that Huang would be able to dodge. He saw a hero in front of him and said that now the commander should take blows from him. But the adversary began to accumulate energy around his hand, which looked very strange. It became brighter and brighter and the commander prepared to direct it towards Huang. The hero at first thought, is he really seeing something that he has never seen before in his life? But it was impossible to think about it now since it was worth dodging this blow. Literally at the last second Huang tilted his body along with his head. But then the commander had already accumulated energy in his second hand and prepared to catch the hero. Huang once again moved his entire body and dodged this attack as well. The commander felt the advantage but slightly underestimated his enemy, because within a second the boy struck him with his very subtle and directed stream of energy. And this forced the commander to retreat a little despite the fact that the confirmation was insignificant. A small cut appeared on his face from which blood flowed profusely. At that second Huang thought that most likely he had witnessed exactly what he had originally thought about. At the same time, he tried to strike his opponent several times with his knee. It looks like the hero was right, and this commander is a cloud swallowed up in darkness. After being hit in the knees, the commander decided to launch a counterattack and sent a huge wall of energy towards him. But the hero managed to block it with the help of 10,000 layers of heaven. 2 energies grappled in battle and destroyed each other since their strength was equal. Both opponents stepped a short distance in order to accumulate strength. At that moment Huang began to accumulate energy in his hand in order to repel the attack if something happened. Be that as it may, the hero thought that in front of him was really a cloud swallowed up in darkness. And this commander told Huang to attack him again because he could do this all day. The hero realized that the very absolute military equipment that no one had seen for hundreds of years now appeared in front of him. Therefore, he should have fought with full strength. While he was thinking about this, the commander had already launched an attack. To defend himself, Huang decided to use one of the 3 martial techniques that was written in 2 books that his father stole. Namely, the hero decided to use the Heavenly Robe Seal, an extremely powerful secret technique. The fact that the boy used this greatly frightened the commander because very few people see such visions in their lives. This technique created hundreds and thousands of small directed energies that rushed past the commander. In addition, some of them went straight through his body. But at this time he thought that they had all bypassed him, and it seemed that the enemy had missed. But when he turned around, he realized that Huan didn't even look in his direction. Within a second, he got the feeling that the energy that had pierced his body was being released. Within a second, the commander got down on one knee from the injuries he received. A moment later, he felt a very long and thin cut appear on his body. He did not know how far this press went and whether it damaged internal organs, but he definitely understood that he needed to retreat since he had no strength left. He looked at Huan and realized that in just a second he could finish him off. Meanwhile, the battles of a small group of the commander of the 13th Battalion reached a stalemate. It was very difficult for everyone to fight, especially Young Ho. He stood in the block and realized that the enemy was much stronger than he expected, and this could not continue. The warrior turned his head and looked at everyone who was fighting with him shoulder to shoulder. It was also very difficult for all the guys since the enemies were much stronger. As one of the warriors swung at him, an obsession flashed through him. Be that as it may, he must hold out in this battle since he has a great responsibility. Young Ho parried this blow and launched a counterattack. But suddenly someone shouted that they needed to retreat, and at that same second all the enemy warriors began to run away into the tall grass. Then Young Ho said that he almost died. All his brothers also agreed with this. He looked at his weapon and realized that the hand that held it was very tired. The commander ran away at great speed along with his subordinates. Huang ran after them and shouted that he would not let them go. The commander understood that he needed to accelerate since the hero having such abilities could catch up with them. Young Ho watched as their commander ran after the strongest enemy. The commander's small squad was willing to risk their lives for their commander, and everyone agreed. They also agreed that in order to become stronger they must learn, even if they have to beg the commander. One of the warriors said that even though he almost died now, he agreed with Young Ho's statement more than ever. After all, only in this way can they become stronger, if only in order to continue a long life in Kanho. Along the way, several soldiers stopped to detain Huang. In order to quickly eliminate them, the hero first used the technique of changing matter. Because of this, the sword blades of these 2 soldiers became very distorted. After that, Huang focused all the energy in his hand and swung at them. A huge wave threw them aside, and they could no longer fight. In order to save time, the hero began to run even before that moment since they fell to the ground. But when he ran up close to the grass, he realized that it seemed like he was doing this in vain. This is due to the fact that it seems that he missed all the opponents and they managed to escape. He concluded that these opponents were leaving quite quickly. He would be interested in fighting with that legendary warrior again. But still Huang remained confident that this enemy would show up again. After this battle, there were again a lot of wounded soldiers from various units. The captain of the storm squad said that it was necessary to provide assistance to all the wounded and move on. After that, this captain approached Huang since the conversation was important. He said that he was not surprised that Huang was not injured, after which he said that the 2 warriors he fought with escaped. The hero concluded that all those opponents like ghosts are able to get away very quickly and unnoticed. After this, the head of the storm asked if Huang knew who he was fighting with, but he answered in the negative. A small detachment of the hero said that he had seen such an enemy for the first time and did not know who it was. The storm captain thought about it because all these circumstances were quite strange. Then Huang asked why the captain was behaving this way. Did he really know any of the attackers? He replied that he knew many high-class Kanho warriors, but he had never seen anyone like them. It was strange that all the opponents were not young and at the same time had no experience in Kanho. The hero said that since the enemies were hiding in the shadows, they could not find out anything about them. This phrase stuck in the head of the captain of the storm squad, and an idea came to him. I asked if they had plans to cross the Yangtze River today. In response, the captain did not answer anything but simply looked into Huan's eyes for a while. Then he turned around and ordered the hero to look at him at night as there was an important conversation. Huang just looked after him because he didn't understand what it meant and what the topic would be. And then he turned around and looked at his little squad. He yelled at Young because he looked shabby during the short fight. The same applied to the hatchet, two-handed sword, and skewer. He also added that if this continues, the reputation of the hero himself may deteriorate. Yango shouted and said that then Huang needs to be told how to become stronger. The group supported him and said that it was very shameful that such a weak detachment was under the control of such a commander. At first this surprised and touched the hero, but then he came up with a plan. And this plan was quite interesting and insidious, so a grin appeared on his face. He said that since the group was asking him to teach him fighting techniques, that meant they were offering sparring. The small detachment was a little scared, but on the whole agreed with this formulation. Then Huang said that it would be very difficult for his subordinates in this battle. Yong-ho said that no matter what, if the commander trains them, they will learn everything. Despite the fact that this warrior averted his eyes looking at the floor, Huang looked straight into his eyes. Then he said that he would become the teacher of this small detachment and lead her along. After that, he announced that this training would begin this evening. But there is still one thing that this squad must know before starting training. Huang said that he will not spare those who want to give up in the process. Meanwhile, the girl was thinking about different things. Her father told her that if the trees do not unite with the Nankong family, then other clans will combine their forces. But the girl, looking at all the bloodshed, found it very difficult to agree with this. She also heard that her marriage partner was called the crazy dog Huffei. She wanted to experience more beautiful love and become a woman of one man. But it seems that such happiness is not available to her. She sighed very heavily because she was disappointed with the fate that life had prepared for her. This sigh was heard by Huan, who was nearby and was not far from where the girl was sitting. He immediately noticed this and wondered what was wrong with Haiyang. Huang decided to ask that narrow-minded man what his plans were for this girl. Just at this time, behind him, this same man was talking to someone. They spoke deliberately, not very loudly, so that no one in the area, especially the girl, would hear it. It seems that a narrow-minded person was indeed involved in this. The hero was wondering what they were whispering about. Well, while the hero was thinking about this, he saw something more interesting for him. It was a man who stood on the edge of the deck and watched the mountains around the Yangtze River. His appearance and sword seemed very familiar to the hero, and he tried to remember who he was. But what caught his eye most was the stranger's sword. Huang examined the weapon very closely but could not remember anything. Then he turned to Yong-ho in the hope that at least this warrior knew this man. Yong-ho said that this is the sword of flying snow whose name is Yipsan. He travels very often along the Yangtze River and is a couple of years older than him. Then the hero said that he looked quite strong, to which the warrior replied that he was a famous person and quite strong. The hero said that it turns out that he is much stronger than Yong-ho himself, who is not even among the 500 best warriors. Then the warrior said that perhaps he would enter there after the commander trained him, to which Huang said that in this case he should not study with him, because in order to achieve something you need to at least think about getting into the top 10. Then he said that if he spent a year training with determination he might achieve something. Yong-ho didn't like this option at all, but he still accepted it. Perhaps if he really moves forward with deadly determination he will succeed. At that moment Huan walked up to that very warrior and leaned his elbows, standing next to him. Then this warrior asked why he came so close. The hero said that he just became interested in something. He immediately asked his new acquaintance if he knew such a person as Red Snow. The warrior walked away a little and asked what he meant. Then Huang said that he saw a sword on his back, and it was this sword that reminded him of the Red Snow. The warrior asked who the hero is, and he replied that the commander of the 13th group in the storm detachment in the village of Kamen in Hangzhou named Huang. In response, the warrior at first simply remained silent for some time and looked into the eyes of his new acquaintance. and then a grin appeared on his face and his overall face became more benevolent. He bowed and said that his name was Yeep San, but his friends called him the Sword of Flying Snow. Huang also bowed and introduced himself to him. All the wars that stood nearby were very surprised that these two met. Huang said that he heard about him from a member of his group and then decided to approach him. Yeep San asked how Huang knows the name Red Snow. He replied that one person told him about him. Sun then asked if he could find out who this man was. But Huan replied that most likely this name would seem unfamiliar to him since few people know it. But he was connected with the city of Kowloon. In fact, because of this he approached Hyung Yeep. The warrior looked at the hero and saw that he was speaking completely seriously. He asked again what the name of this informant was, but the hero said that he would like to forget this name so he would not say. They were silent for a few seconds, just looking at the waves that diverged from the ship. Then, using telekinesis, he asked Yeep what he was doing in this place. And he said in the same way that it was very noisy here, and therefore he cannot talk about it here, and if he wants to talk frankly then he needs to make an appointment. I thought about you a little and thought for a couple of seconds and then suggested that we meet in Hefei, after which he clarified that he would inform the specific place a little later. After that he once again bowed and told his new acquaintance that I would see him soon. After this Wana began to walk away approaching Young Ho. When he asked what they were talking about, the heroes said that about all sorts of unimportant topics. After that he asked if there was any tavern in Hefei that served delicious food. Then Young Ho said that he knew only a few places, but of them, he had only been to Sohadaru. Huang really liked this name and realized that it was perfect. After that he turned around and looked towards Yeep San. Using telekinesis he said that it would be good if they met tomorrow in Sohadaru around 12 a.m. When Huang received a positive response he told his small squad that they could begin. And everyone looked at him with misunderstanding because they did not know what the heroes meant. Huang asked if any of them decided to give up the desire to become stronger after multiple training sessions. Meanwhile the mysterious warriors slammed their hands on the table and said that they did not understand how they could fail to cope with such a task. The subordinate said that they turned upside down all the places where he could look, but they never found the eyes of the poisonous snake. After this the warrior said that this subordinate was just a useless idiot who was of no use. He extended his hand in his direction and the second subordinate saw that it tensed and began to shake. When he turned his gaze to his subordinate, he noticed that sweat began to flow from his face and in general he tensed. Literally a moment later this subordinate flew into the door with tremendous force. After that he pushed away from her and fell to the floor. The head said that if they don't find him then he and many other subordinates will be left without a head. Then this subordinate said that he obeyed his commander and everything would be done. Meanwhile squad leader Storm invited Huang to his office for tea. When he arrived he told the hero that he could sit down at the table. Huang walked a short distance and then approached the table and sat down on a chair. For some time the hero was simply silent and wondered where they would start their conversation. The commander was also silent because there were many topics for conversation and it was necessary to choose one. The commander said that everything looked as if the hero was interested in a lot about him. Huang made the assumption that the commander was not from the commune village at all. Then he replied that first he should reveal his identity to the hero. He said that he is the leader of the East Coast among the 4 great commanders of the Murim-Jongcheon alliance. This slightly alarmed Huang as he very quickly realized what he was getting at. He asked if it turned out that he was not a resident of the commune village but a scout and a Murim alliance. The commander said that he was not a scout but simply received permission from the elder. Huang made the assumption that the commander revealed his true face in order to ask him for something. But in response the commander only remained silent and for some time thought about what to say, despite the fact that after some time it was already late at night. And even Huang himself left this building heading to his home. Well, although from here he still had hundreds and thousands of thoughts in his head. Well, go away he turned back and tried to remember what exactly they asked him for. The commander said that 10 years ago an unknown gang appeared and killed the Murim masters. However, at the site where the victims were injured traces were found that they should have been discovered. Huang then suggested that it was the art technique of Zhang Seol. The hero explained this by saying that if you ask those warriors who were hiding for 10 years they will say that the demonic school or Zhangseol is to blame for everything. Therefore Huang said that the commander should leave his useless suspicion aside and move on to the next conversation. Then the commander said that they discovered traces and began to pursue them. Huang said that the gang was located located in Jiangsu and Zhejiang provinces, so this is impossible. Then the hero said that it seems that this is the reason why the commander settled in Hangzhou, and it looks like they've already found clues related to the strangers. When the commander asked him not to interrupt, Huang said that he didn't seem to interrupt him. When the hero left here after a while, he thought for a long time. The enemy he was fighting was indeed a suspicious enemy. However, he is not alone. The owner of the energy that he felt in Hangzhou was also strange. Perhaps they are somehow connected, or there are circumstances that connect them. Hazake himself really appeared, but the hero believed that this was not true due to the lack of evidence. The commander asked if the hero knew who killed the Murim masters a little over 10 years ago using this technique. These people were called Sam Ak, and their only goal was to eliminate these masters. The commander said that they will now make every effort to stop these killers, and even if you have to sacrifice your lives. After all, this is the path of those who know the concept of the heroic spirit. Well, the heroes didn't see their role in this. He just wanted to quickly return to the island of the flying dragon. He did not understand why he should help the Murim Union if it never did anything to him. While walking down the street and thinking about this, he suddenly felt something. It was someone's presence, and this stranger was radiating energy. The hero felt that one or more people were standing around the bend. Then he thought that first he needed to complete the current task to protect his beautiful little sister. The warriors who stood around the corner did not understand why the hero did not approach them and tried to look out. The two mercenaries could not understand where his family hired such a warrior who sensed their presence. They realized that this guy was clearly no mistake and took up their swords, preparing to attack. By this time, Huang was already standing behind them and asked if they were interested in who he was. But they didn't even have time to take their swords out of their sheaths because Huang quickly rushed between them. This confused them, and after that he kicked one of them aside. He then used the energy to send a stream of power into one of them. The enemy was unable to block this, and the stream of energy aimed directly at his head. Two defeated warriors lay defeated in the alley. They were one of the few who knew about the strength of the enemy. The hero realized that he had gotten rid of the rats, and it seems that these two warriors were all, since he did not feel their presence. But still, Huan couldn't shake the feeling that he had forgotten something. Meanwhile, his small squad had been waiting all this time for their commander, who was supposed to come for training. After some time, the hero headed to a place that one of the members of his squad recommended to him. This place was a tavern for the Sohoder, and he did not come here to drink beer. Standing near the entrance, he thought that the mad dog Nangong Jin probably comes here every day. Having entered inside, he began to look around and at the same time climb the stairs to the second floor. Well, suddenly he heard some girl shout at him, ordering him to get out of the way. She pointed a finger at him and told the lanky guy to leave the gorse. A little girl stood in front of him, and he asked you if she was telling him this. She said that this guy was just making fun of her, and for the third time she asked to leave. Huang only replied that he doesn't hit little ones, and considering that this is bar, it's better for the little one to leave before he complains to her parents. The girl was very angry by the fact that Huang did not want to leave, and she decided to take action. And the hero, felt that the girl would now undertake them much in advance. At first, the girl began to strike with her hands at low speed, and I was incredibly surprised because the hero dodged very quickly. Then she began to deliver more and more blows that were faster and faster. The hero said that showing talent in such a situation is quite an interesting move. But then when he got tired of dodging, he caught the girl's fist. She became very angry when she realized that now she could not move. She started screaming and told him to immediately let go of her hand. Two men with swords ran up to her and ordered the hero to immediately release the lady. Then they began to threaten the anonymous person and said that if he did not let go, they would cut off his hand. Then Huang told the girl to bow her head and apologize. This made her fall out of love even more, and at that moment she was ready to kill the hero. He squeezed her hand even tighter, which made the girls even more uncomfortable. All the drunkards who were sitting at the tables nearby concluded that the hero was no longer a tenant. Huang said that if the girl does not do as he said, then no one will save her. Then yes, the girl said that if the hero knew who she was. But the hero interrupted her, saying that he had never just let go of those who swung their fists at him. Then he heard someone from the side say that it was better for him to take his paws away. Then Huang shifted her gaze and saw that several bodyguards were standing around one man. This man calmly drank alcohol after saying the phrase. Then Huang asked the man why he should do this. And this man, who was also a little drunk said that because he said so. Then the hero said that he would prefer to refuse this order. This made the man angry, and he asked how someone dared to touch the little lady of the great Nangong family. From that moment on, the hero realized that he had the little lady of the Nangong family in his hand. When the bodyguards began to come closer to free her, the girl told everyone to leave. Since her words were law, they could not come closer. She invited that, and even if the stranger breaks her arm, the bodyguards should not interfere. Then she said that this person is the bastard. If they want to save her, then they need to tell Appa to do it. Huang asked what the girl was doing, and she told him not to let her go now. Then the hero said that it might be better to just break her arm and then let her go. Then in a whisper he told her to quickly apologize if she didn't want to choke in tears. The girl understood that this guy was very serious. He had the most unshakably cold-blooded temperament of anyone she had ever met. She also understood that her Appa, who was very drunk, would never defeat him. What frightened her was that this stranger didn't even stop knowing the name of their family. The man who came closer asked Huang if he heard him well. The hero looked at the girl and saw confusion in her eyes. At that moment a grin appeared on his face, and this did not anger the man. Then the girl screamed and asked her Appa not to come closer. Huang realized that if a girl calls him Appa, it means Nangong Jin is in front of him. Then the man shouted that the hero had guessed correctly, and in front of him was indeed Nangong Jin. Then Huang said that now he has one less job. The girl tensed even more when she heard this. Huang looked at the girl and asked if she was Nangong San. The man shouted that this girl was his sister Nangong San, nicknamed Frozen. The hero turned to the girl and said that since she is a fairly smart child, she knows exactly what to do. The girls really didn't like this situation, but she didn't see any other way out. She whispered that she asked the hero for forgiveness. Well, then Huang squeezed her hand even harder and said that this change was too quiet. Then the girl got down on one knee and said that she had made a mistake and sincerely apologized. The girl started crying even harder and tried to say that next time it won't happen like this. But because of her tears, she couldn't put the sentence together, so Huang said to start over. Then the girl said that next time she would watch her words. Everyone around could not believe that the steel doll of the Nangong Frozen family was crying. After the girl apologized, the heroes immediately let go of her hand. He advised you to understand your hand and disperse the blood through the vessels so that it can move it. Then Nangong Jin began to run towards Huang, asking what he thought he was doing. But the girl started screaming and asking the genie to stop and not do this, to which the man said that San needed to wait a little while he dealt with the enemy. Then the girl asked him to shut up and not do what he was planning. She cried again and said that she didn't want to see him die. This touched the man, and he got down on one knee to talk to her. Then the hero said that he wanted to talk a little with Nangong Jin, after which he told the man to follow him outside. When I went to Ngunjina and followed him, I was already thinking about how I would kill this scoundrel. When leaving, the hero advised the girl not to wave her fists in front of people next time. She said that she understood and this will not happen again. Meanwhile, it was already pitch black outside. The hero was quite successful in eliminating enemies left and right. Nangong Jin's bodyguards were not particularly strong opponents, so he did not exert himself. The hero even managed to defeat a thug who was several times his size. To do this, he lifted him by the neck and then with the same hand struck him on the chin. Thus, all third of the bodyguard were eliminated and could no longer fight. Huang ordered them to stand still, and if they left without permission they would die. Then he turned his head to Jean and said that he needed to talk about business. Then the man shouted that after he brazenly dared to harm his sister, he should be executed. Huang ignored this request and said that he only wanted to ask one question. He heard that he was planning to marry Ha Young and asked what he thought about this girl. Well, the man shouted that this question did not concern him at all. Then the hero said that he was simply interested in this topic and he would like to hear the answer. Jean said that most likely some girl from a brothel would be better than Yong Ha, and in general he doesn't like such young girls. You didn't like this wording at all, and he thought about feeding the man to the fish. But then Jean said that he was too mature for Yun Ha to handle his thing in bed. The hero could not afford to hear this anymore, and the man understood this, so he prepared himself. He jumped with a sword on Huang, and the blade was already a few centimeters away from his head. But a second before the sword passed along his face, the man saw the seriousness on the hero's face. Then he put his hand forward directly in the direction in which the sword was flying. Huang was able to stop the movement of this blade very easily with just 2 fingers. At first Jean didn't understand anything, but then he was very surprised because he didn't know that this was even possible. Before he had time to fully think about it, he received a very strong blow to the liver. This caused him great pain and he could not move for some time. The heroes of course took advantage of this and delivered another punch with such force that the enemy flew away. The blow was so strong that after some time smoke even began to come out of the hero's fist. The man felt very bad at that moment due to the fact that the blow landed directly in his stomach. After some time he spat out a small amount of blood from his mouth. He could no longer fight at all since the plus of everything else was the large amount of alcohol in him. After that Huang said that he would beat the crap out of him for saying those words. The man only managed to raise his head and look incomprehensibly into the hero's eyes. All this time the bodyguards watched as Huang struck him every second. Although they were not particularly strong, their number brought a huge amount of pain. He raised one of his legs and prepared to perform a rather sneaky strike. The attacks continued further and further, and even the bodyguard found it painful to watch. At that moment the forest that was nearby only heard the sighs of this man. But after a few minutes everything became quiet as Huang was tired. The man was lying on the floor and there were a lot of marks from the beating. Huang said that he had warmed up but would continue this a little later. Then he turned to the bodyguard and told them to beat him without touching his face. Well, when the bodyguard didn't answer, the hero said that if they didn't want to he would kill them. The hero looked at the man with a crazy smile and said that the road had been hard. By that time Jean was already spitting blood from the beatings. He could hardly believe that they called him Big Brother Master and followed him around. However, these people who treated him even more kindly than his own sister bludgeoned him in order not to get hit in the head. At that moment the man realized that his younger sister was right and her older brother was a clueless and a complete idiot. Then suddenly the bodyguards heard Huang shouting at them to stop. Then he pointed his finger into the forest and said to immediately run away from here in fear. They said that they understood the task and at that very second began to run away. The hero came closer to the man and prepared to talk to him. But it seemed that Nangong Jin was very ill and he couldn't even get up. But when he was able to raise his head, he told the hero that he was fucking scum. Huan did not tolerate this and sent Jean straight into the water with one kick. In the water he suddenly gained strength and somehow managed to crawl onto land. It took a lot of strength from him to crawl onto land and turn over on his back. When he gathered his strength, he asked the hero what his name was. Huang introduced himself and after that he said that all reservoir dogs end up like this. When the hero turned, he saw that the man turned his head so as not to look into Huang's eyes. He didn't really like this, but nevertheless he decided to continue the dialogue. He said that if he did not change completely he would catch him and simply kill him. But for now he is still thinking, because if you think about the future then it would be convenient. At that moment Gina could not understand at all how Huang could talk like that. He couldn't believe that he didn't even raise an eyebrow and said something like that. Do such people really exist? Having risen a little, Jean asked how old is Huang at the moment. But instead of saying his exact age, the hero said that he is Ha Young's older brother. The man couldn't believe it and asked Huang several more times if it was true. Regardless of age, the hero was a superior brother-in-law. So we can say that he is older than Jean. Then he warned that if he saw tears flowing from Ha Young's eyes, he would alarm the entire Nangong family. He warned that he is a very strong fighter, definitely stronger than Nangong thinks. The hero also added that that smart little sister realized that Huang was a real demon. Meanwhile, the hero returned to the tavern from which he had left not long ago. Passing here, everyone who was inside tried to be quieter. Huang tried to find a table with his new friend, and after a while he managed to find one. Coming closer, he asked how long he kept himself waiting, but Yip San said that he had just arrived. He pours himself some tea and said that he heard that Huang's acquaintances were somehow connected with his last name. And since the hero's surname is Li, he asked if this acquaintance meant the mayor. Huang said that the mayor was his grandfather. It was very interesting to realize that the person sitting in front of you is related to the mayor. Huang asked why the other party decided to leave Zhang's area. And he replied that everything was for the sake of the teacher's last instruction. The hero realized that this teacher was the outstanding warrior Kowloon who was killed by Zhang Sol. But in order to make sure, Huan asked Yip San when he died. The man replied that this happened last year, and he couldn't say more. Huang then asked when the man would return to Kowloon. And he replied that this is after he finds out something about one person. Her hero was very interested in what kind of person he was. Then the man leaned over and said that this was Li Chunnayan. he needed to find him as this was the master's last instruction. Huan was very uneasy when he realized that his father would be wanted. Yobsen asked Huang why he stopped at the commune, and the hero said that this is because this is his mother's home. After some time he intends to return to Kowloon and invited the man to do this together. In just 2 days he will finish all his business, and so he suggested meeting in 3 days in the morning. Of course Yip-san agreed since this deal is beneficial for both. Now Huang had one less thing to worry about. If he goes with Yopsang, he will be able to act without personally encountering enemies. The next day the team was already ready, and after traveling the distance they arrived at their destination. They drove through the main gate along with the carriage in which the girl was. All the warriors looked around as it was their first time in these places. Suddenly the horse stopped, and this could only mean that everyone had arrived. The warriors began to accompany the girl, who began to get out of this carriage. Also the Cliff Cloud Divine Sword Samsung-un and his assistant also approached the building. The doors to this building opened and an elderly man came out. He greeted the guests and said that apparently the road had been difficult. Of course no one expected that the head of the family himself would appear here, but still no one could believe that it was only the housekeeper who came to them. The housekeeper bowed and then said that everyone could follow him. They together with the soldiers went to the courtyard which was located nearby. Everyone was already standing there and waiting for the guests to finally arrive. Among all the others Huan noticed a girl he already knew. It was very unpleasant to realize that Sanson was also here. Then he told Young Ho that he was taking care not to be detected while hiding behind his back. Ha-Yun began to get out of the carriage, and at that moment the warriors were still vigilantly looking around. When the girl came out, she generally behaved very calmly and charmed everyone with her beauty. When she walked out of the carriage, everyone looked exclusively at her. The hero thought that since she was his little sister, she should have such confidence. At the moment when Huan was looking at his sister, San noticed him. "You are looking literally." After a few seconds, she realized that this was the man from the tavern. Then a smile appeared on her face and a plan matured in her head. Meanwhile evening came in the Black Cloud family. The servant told his deputy that everyone had arrived to the Nangong family. Then the leader said 5 to the boss, and the servant said that he had been tracked and told not to appear in Nanjing. He really didn't like that. He behaved like a proud man, but in the end he was wounded and couldn't even sort out the matter in the commune. Then the servant said about the clan the Golden Sky, because now they will not act since losses are losses. The chairman added that the Golden Sky clan forgot thanks to whom they became able to fight for rivalry with Nangong. Then the servant said that, in his opinion, there was a need to give a warning. The head agreed with this and ordered to contact Sudzu and tell Cheon to come to him. Then the servant bowed and said that he would do it as soon as possible. Meanwhile, in the courtyard where Huang's group arrived, screams from a fight could be heard. This was all because his small squad tried to fight him in battle. The 12 Forms of Supremacy is a martial arts technique that requires without standard techniques to transcend one's 5 senses and use the 6th. In 2 secret volumes of books, it was written that this is the most powerful, but at the same time they are probably a complex technique. This is exactly what Huang tried to teach his squad over and over again. He heard Yong Ho say that they would try again. He liked it because he remembered that when his father taught him, he also wanted to give up several times. When Huang saw that his squad could still stand, he still continued to fight. Other warriors and guards who heard screams during this battle were very scared. Hearing these sounds, they always decided to get out of here quickly until they were found. The squad did better and better, but despite this they still lost. Yong Ho understood that he had to hold on, because only by winning the fight with death can you get your goal. The next morning was truly beautiful since the sun did not burn everything around, but it was shining well. Huang woke up later than everyone else as usual and didn't see any problem in it. Looking into the sky, he noticed that the weather today was just a feast for the eyes. Suddenly, he heard Sanson approaching him and greeting him by calling him Taihyup. Huan immediately asked why she came, but he was more surprised that she used the word Taihyup, which meant addressing an adult warrior. The guards looked at each other because they did not understand why the hero was speaking like that to the young mistress. Then Huan asked the question again, asking why she came. The girl said that she thought that her older brother had already told about everything. The hero did not understand anything but began to replay in his head the entire dialogue with the genie on the riverbank. Then he said that Sansan said that she would marry a man who was so strong that he would make her cry. And then Juan realized what she meant and he didn't like it. Hiro said that children joke very often and this is probably exactly the case. After all, in his eyes, she was still a child, but Sansan said that everything would change soon. But then she told me in a loud voice that she would be able to dress the child now. Then the guards immediately thought that Huang was touching the lady, and since the hero didn't like it, he immediately shouted that he didn't do it. Then he heard someone from around the corner ask who dared to yell in this place. Then he told the girl to come inside because they needed to talk. The guards said that this did not need to be done, and they would go and tell the whole situation to the leader. But in response, grandfather only walked away from them and looked into their eyes with condemnation. After that, she slammed the door in their faces and went to get Juan. While the girl closed the doors behind her, Juan tried to think through the dialogue. He asked Sansan what was the reason for such actions. He knows that Sansan is a pretty smart and most likely she has a true goal. But the girl said that everything was exactly as she had told him before. Juan didn't like that the girl wanted to play with him and didn't want to tell her true thoughts. The hero's face became even more serious and he asked if the girl wanted to die. Then the hope in Sansan's eyes disappeared and she was very scared. After a short time, Huang noticed that tears began to appear on the girl's face. She began to cry loudly and the heroes asked to stop because others would then think that he was beating her. Then she answered that if you ask any girl, you won't find one who won't cry when Taehyup says that. Then Huan said that he would listen to the girl, and for a while she calmed down. Then the hero said that he would not put pressure on her, so she should tell the truth. He assumed that Sansan needed his strength. The girl realized that she was right. There was a terrible man in front of her, and she must definitely take him into her hands. Huang said that he sees that there is a lot of such desire in the girl, and this is the main reason. The girl wanted to say something, but Huan immediately stopped her. He told Sansan not to call him Taehyup anymore because it pisses him off, after which he also noticed that in general the girl looks much better when she laughs and does not cry. This made Sang a little embarrassed and she silently looked at Huan for a while. Then the hero said that the girl can only continue talking without any Taehyup. She began her story by saying that Huang is quite handsome. The hero immediately said that this is a well-known fact. And then she added that she thought that the hero could bring help to their family, which was being attacked by the golden sky. Huan liked that she got down to business, but then the girl said that she also needed someone to control her. The hero almost instantly asked why the girl was sick in this case. He spoke specifically about psychological problems, by which I mean that only such people need a controller. Maybe it was like that. Sometimes she gives herself goosebumps because when she first saw a brutally dying man, she didn't even raise an eyebrow, and she was only 6 years old then. Moreover, she even secretly decided to look at the body and asked why that person died. So the years passed, and when she turned 14, absurd thoughts still came into her head from time to time. Sansan said that this is true and most likely she has serious psychological problems. Then Huang said that the girl needed to tell him how she got these problems, adding that he isolated all sounds. At that moment, the girl realized that in front of him was a real, outstanding warrior, more professional than she thought. She even suggested that this man was much stronger than his father and grandfather. At first she was silent for a very short time in order to understand where to start, but then she began to talk. In just 5 minutes she told her whole life and the reasons why she collapsed. Huang said that such a young girl really has problems, and she confirmed that this worries her. While they were talking, they heard someone from the street asking if Sansan was inside. This voice was similar to the voice of the head of the family that Huan heard yesterday. It was so because he, along with his relatives, stood right at the entrance. After they asked this question, they simply silently looked at the door waiting for an answer. The room was surrounded by a very powerful energy, and Huang guessed whose it was. A few seconds later, the doors opened and everyone saw Sansang and Huan come out. The head of the family immediately asked if his daughter was okay. The girl said that she was talking about something important with Appa, and he interrupted their conversation. Then Nangong Jin saw that the hero came out of the room with the girl, and when he saw him, he immediately became very scared and nervous. This was visible visually, and soon the father also noticed it. Gina said that they need to get out of here since they made a mistake and everything is fine with Sansang. The girl said that Appa number 2 doesn't have to worry and leave. They will talk a little more Huan and come to them. Then Jean said that everything was fine and they needed to leave since there was still a lot of business to do. The father still could not understand what was wrong, but the head of the detachment was most suspicious of the storm. Using his telepathic powers, he asked Huang what the hell was going on. The heroes only said that there was no need to worry and he could calmly leave. Then the commander directly asked if he could trust Huang. After a short silence, the commander said that he had some suspicions, and this filled the hero. Because of this, he silently turned around and returned to the room where he and Sanson were talking. The girl told her family that they were fine and could leave. She slammed the doors right in front of their foxes and went into the hero's room. The family, together with the commander of the storm squad, stood near the door for a little longer and then dispersed. Having closed the door, the girl asked when Huang was leaving, and he replied that the day after tomorrow in the morning. The girl informed him that she was going to follow them to the commune. Huang said that he was not heading there as he would be traveling with his group members for a while. He said that the girl shouldn't even think about following them. After that, the girl bent closer right towards Huang's face. After that, she pointed her finger at him and said that it was clear from him that he had never slept with a girl. This made Huang angry, and he said that everything that comes into her head flies out of this girl's mouth. Sam said that by the appearance of the hero, it is clear that even when he is in a room with a beautiful girl, he treats her like a child. Then the hero said that he at least wiped his lips with someone else's lips. At first he didn't understand what he said, but when the girl tried to hold back her laughter, he realized everything. The whole yard could hear the girl laughing, and it lasted exactly a few minutes. The next day turned out to be even brighter than the previous one, despite the fact that there were still a few clouds in the sky. The warriors stood in the courtyard and talked about something among themselves. Huang leaned on the table and said that he was annoyed that this child was constantly telling him. Together with Yongo, they went out into the street, and then the hero heard the conversation of one of the warriors. He began to listen, and what he heard did not entirely please him. They were talking about rumors, and it seemed that Huang knew the topic of these very rumors very well. Suddenly, he heard someone telepathically trying to contact him. Turning around, he saw the storm squad leader and then focused on the words. He said that the hero must do this for the sake of his sister. Already at lunch, Huang moved to the same table with the rest of the Sanson family. Her mother said that the hero would have to take care of them. Huang, at first, I didn't understand what the girl's mother meant by these words, but that woman did not give any explanation but only said that she said what she wanted. Then Sanson added that from this day on he will treat her. She heard from Huang that he would soon sail along the Yangtze River, and therefore she would follow him since she already had permission. The hero could not believe that she was given permission for such a dangerous adventure. The father of the family said that his daughter already has strong fighting skills for her age, and she will not be a burden. At first the heroes wanted to answer something to this phrase, but then they saw the look of the father of the family and came up with an idea. He said that he was asking on behalf of the entire family to do this favor for him. It was clear from Huang's face that he practically agreed and did not see a way out at all. The mother said that only these days she saw her daughter smile sincerely. Then Huang wanted to object to something, and when she mustered up the courage, she finally voiced it. He telepathically said that they still couldn't take this girl with them. Then the girl with the same telepathic abilities said that she would kill herself if he did not take her with him. The head of the family saw that Huang was at a loss and said that he was ready to listen to him. Well, at that moment the hero already realized that the decision was made without him, and he would have to follow the lead. He thought a little, and after that he still organized a speech. He said that then he has a request to the head of the family because someone must take care of Ha Young's safety. Then father said that the boys should not worry about it, and mom said that they believe in Sanson Huan. Then the hero said that he would bring the girl's backpack, and she replied that first she needed to buy food. In general, everyone who was sitting at the table at that moment thought only that they would make a good couple. The group set out, and constantly the members of the squad talked with the new little girl. The conversations were different, but mostly everyone was surprised why Huan even took her with him. Then the thug said that he could carry the girl's backpack, but she said that this was not necessary. Yop Sam asked the hero why he took this young girl with him, but he replied that she was just a child. And then this man said that this fragile girl might bring problems in the future. But the hero only said that she was not fragile if she was carrying such a backpack. After that, Huang offered to take him with him for 1 year in Namgunsa. But the man didn't have time to answer anything because the little girl said that they could go further by boat. Then the group began to move closer and closer to port. They had already approached the water, and near the entrance to this tavern a homeless man was sitting eating something. At first he didn't even pay attention to the people passing by, but when he realized who was in front of him, he realized that he could not lose the chance. He threw the bowl of rice he was holding on the floor and began to run. He ran with everyone a lot towards Huang, but it didn't look like he was going to attack. Despite this, Yong Ho drew his sword and ordered the stranger to stop. Huang looked at the homeless man and ordered the warrior from his squad to move away from him. At first Young Ho didn't understand anything, but then he followed the order. The homeless man began to thank the hero, after which Huang told him to get up. Then this homeless man took off his hood, and Huang remembered that this was one of those thieves. He asked what he was doing here. The thief replied that it was a very long story. Then Huang clarified his question and asked why he was here in Hangzhou. Then the thief began to cry and said that all his friends were dead, and they cut off all their limbs and heads, sparing no one. According to his information, Di Haiyan went to Hefei and followed him. Then Huang realized that this guy could be that mysterious warrior who was emitting enormous energy. The tearful one said that only Huang himself could tear this villain into pieces and throw him on dog food. At first the heroes were silent for a while and simply looked at the thief's face, which was in bitter tears. The thief fell to the floor and began to cry even more as he remembered all his friends. Then Huan asked him where he was. This instilled a grain of hope in the thief's eyes, and he raised his head.